registry system for basic sectors in agriculture? And we are asking this question, sir, because backyard hog raisers receive free insurance, di ba, provided they are listed in the registry system for basic sectors in agriculture. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair. That is correct po. Yan po yung reason, kaya po nabanggit natin kanina, Mr. Chair, wala po tayong existing accurate total ng inventaryo po ng ating hog raisers, ilan ng commercial, ilan ng backyard. At yun po precisely, Mr. Chair, is one of the reason bakit pupush po tayo, i-implement po natin yung hog farmers registry.
Ako sir, ang tagal na po nito. Wala pa rin pala ito sir hanggang ngayon. For example, how many commercial hog raisers have availed of the insurance coverage? Wala rin po kayong listahan yan?
Mr. Chair, nagsisimula pa lamang po at we will provide po the report once we have it, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, that brings me to my earlier statement last hearing. Dun sa mga nakausap po natin, hindi ko totoo na naghihingalo sila, patay na ho talaga sila. Yun yung sinasabi ho nila, no? And I hope we will act expeditiously about this. But again, sir, medyo nahihirapan akong intindihin. Pag 21 na yung ulo ng baboy na hinahawakan mo, commercial ka na po kaagad. So, hindi ka na po pasok doon sa backyard farmers na nakikinabang doon sa whatever credit programs or insurance coverage that you are offering.
Mr. Chair, yun po yung classification that is being used po by PSA and kasama naman po lahat yan doon po sa insurance. Tingnan din po namin, Mr. Chair, yung pag-rectify noong siguro po sinasabi ninyo na classification ng backyard at commercial kasi po under the PSA rule wala pong semi-commercial pero andyan po si Mr. Chester Tan, he can attest na usually po sa industry ang pag-identify po niyan backyard, semi-commercial at saka commercial. So consequently hindi po ito yung paglagay po ng classification ng PSA.
Can we hear, Mr. President, from Mr. Chester about this?
Good morning. Good morning, Senator. If you allow, Mr. Senator, we can ask our former Congressman Briones kasi po malaki po yung hawak niya sa backyard po.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President, Senator Joel, at sa lahat ng mga senador, good afternoon. Yan ang napakalaking problema. Ang kanilang assessment, 20 heads below lang ang backyard. Dapat ang backyard na nasa mga yung 50 heads na sow level, dapat yan considered pa rin backyard Kaya doon sa kanilang binayaran, doon sa indemnification, napaka-kokonti lang ng naka-avail noon dahil yun lang 20 heads below ang kanilang binabayaran para sa tinatamaan na African swine fever. Ngayon, ang sinisisi ni Director Domingo ay ang mga racers dahil mabilis daw kumalat dahil hindi nagdi-declare. Ever since nung magkaroon ng meeting noong September 2019, sa Management Crisis Committee, sinuggest ko na, ang ganda lang inyong plano, ang ating plano. Nasaan ang ating budget? Nasaan ang ating budget na ibabayad sa mga tinatamaan na African swine fever para kusang magbayad, kusang mag-declare ng kanilang alaga pag tinatamaan. Dapat magbayad tayo ng 5,000 noong time na yon. Yan man ay galing sa backyard or commercial. Kung ginawa nila yan, hindi sana kumalat, hindi sana naubos ang baboy sa Luzon. At hanggang ngayon, hindi nila binabago yung kanilang protocol sa pagpigil sa ASF. Wala rin mangyayari diyan sa bantay ASF nila. Kasi hanggang ngayon, inalis pa nila yung sa backyard. So wala na magdi-declare. Yun ang sinasabi ko. Hindi mo may alis sa isang nag-aalaga, lalo na yung mga backyard racers, na itago mo na at ibenta mo yung natitira mong buhay na baboy. At yung even ng mga komersyal, sa laki ng kanilang puhunan, totally bankrupt ka eh. 100% tatanggalin yung baboy mo. Eh, ang dami mong utang, ang dami mong problema. So, yan na, umpisa pa lang ang iniling natin. Ang ganda ng ating plano, wala naman tayong budget para sumpuin ng African swine fever. O yan ang nangyari. Yung kinatatakutan ko noong September 2019, ito na ngayon ang pinakamalaki nating problema. At tuloy-tuloy po itong mangyayari kung hindi maglalagay ng indemnification fund. Kaya po yung state of calamity na hinihingi ng ating mga senador, ni Senator Kiko Pangilinan, napaka-importante po niyan. Kailangan po maglagay ng malaking pondo. Ay sa halip po yung taripa ay na makukuha dito sa importation at magagamit sa pondo para pagpigil ng African swine fever, ay hindi po nangyari dahil inalis pa at ibinigay sa mga importer. Kaya wala pong pag-asa ang ating industriya. Sa lahat po ng inirekomenda ni Secretary Dar, ay talaga po namang nakaka-discourage. Nakakalungkot. So ako po yung mamaya may 5%, eh ayaw ko pong ubusin na oras ni
Yes, Congressman Briones, just to ask you one more question. No? Kayo ho, bilang stakeholder, meron ho ba kayong alam na timely updates na ginagawa ang ating departamento? For example, yung total pigs culled, loss due to ASF per city, municipality, hog farmers indemnified, tests and samples being conducted, etc.?
Ang kanila pong inireport na pinatay na baboy ay nasa 400,000. Eh inyo pong compute yan, dapat po yan sa 5,000, kung yan ay sinasabi nila yan ang binayaran nila sa backyard, ay mahigit po ay 2 billion pesos po. Pero 1 billion lang ang kanilang budget na naibigay, 1 million 2 or 1 billion 2. So short na short, kaya marami pa po ang hindi nababayaran. Even do sa mga backyard. Ay sa commercial po kahit isa'y wala. So wag na tayong magtaka kung bakit ang bilis kumalat ng African swine fever. Eh hindi lang po yung tinatamaan ang naging dahilan kaya mabilis na wala ang baboy. Yung pong natatakot. Halimbawa, nasa kabilang barangay na yung African swine fever. Abay, bakit ka pa maghihintay? Natamaan yung iyong barangay, yung iyong bayan.
Can we respond?
Binibenta ng ating mga hog raisers yung kanilang alaga, kaya ang bilis na ubos sa ating baboy.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can we respond to that, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, that is the reason nga po na we adjusted yun pong presyo ng ating pagbabayad sa baboy. Yun pong binabanggit ni Congressman Briones na nung nangyari nung 2019. When we were hit by ASF during that time, Mr. Chair, wala pong nakalaan na pondo, na nakaabang na pondo pang indemnify. And given po the government account budget and accounting system, hindi po ganun kadali na mag-mobilize po ng pondo. Bagaman nagbigay po kaagad ng pondo ang Office of the President at saka po pinayagan po tayo ng Kongreso na gamitin po yung QRF. Yun po yung ginagamit natin na pagbabayad. Ngayon po, to further elevate po yung pag-compensate natin sa farmers, ipinasok na po natin ito dun sa insurance system para po yung 5,000 po, Mr. Chair, ay maging 10,000 at 14,500. Yun po yung ginagawa po natin. Yung babay ay po, Congressman Briones, let's give it a chance. Actually po sa Batangas, sa probinsya po ni Congressman Briones, maganda po ang performance ng bantay ASF sa barangay. Maganda po yung ugnayan natin sa DA, sa LGU. Maganda rin po ang ugnayan doon sa private sector. Kaya po ang out of ibang barangay sa Batangas ay ilan na lamang po ang mayroong ASF.
Isang question lang, quick question, no, on RSBSA, sir. Kung wala po kayong impormasyon sa kung ilan talaga ang local hog farmers natin, ano po yung basehan ng pagbabudget natin sa assistance insurance? 2 years na po ang ASF eh.
Yung farmer doon po sa registry. Kaya po, by enrolling, malalaman po natin at magiging transparent po sa atin.
Diyos ko, wala nga yung registry eh. Anyway, sorry sir, parang
Mr. Chair, can I
I'm just
Sagutin ko lang
really
po si-
disappointed.
Mr. President,
regards to the number of hog farmers in the country, we have data coming from the different regional offices. Sa ngayon po, yung suma total ay umaabot ng 880,000. Pero yung affected po ng ASF lamang ay yung 68,000. Yung 68,000 po ay karamihan doon ay nabayaran na ng indemnification to the tune of 1.3 billion na po yung naibigay.
Sige sir.
At
Kunyari ito na lang sir. Sige, yung last hearing tinanong ko, ilan yung na-displace na hog farmers? Dati wala kayong data nung last hearing. Ngayon may data na ho ba kayo?
yun po, yung directly na displace po yung 68,000. Nabigyan na sila ng indemnification at yung
68,000 na yung displaced. Kasi last time sabi nyo, yan yung 68,000, yan yung affected eh. So ngayon, yan na yung displaced. Is that your new statement?
these are directly affected po.
I'm not asking about directly affected. I'm asking about the displaced, which I asked last hearing, and you said you don't have the figures. So right now, I'm asking you, do you have the figures? Wala. Yun ang problema po eh. But anyway, alis na ako sa DA. Kay Secretary Carl, I have 2 and 30. Secretary Chua, we saw the presentation ng NEDA kanina. Simple lamang po yung katanungan natin. Kung ang projections nyo po nasa 476,000 metric tons ang deficit, yun ho yung pinakita nyong projection kanina, bakit 80% nito o 404,000 metric tons ang subjected to 5% na tariffs? Ulitin ko po, yung pinakita nyo pong projection, 476,000 metric tons ang deficit. Ang Bureau of Animal Industry Importation data for pork last year, 2020, is only 256,000 metric tons.
Mr. President, Senator Joel, the main reason is the inflation is extremely high already, even higher than the rice spike in 2018. And across all regions, I'm seeing inflation of at least 7% for meat products. That is the lowest, to as high as 29.7%. The average normal inflation in the years prior to the ASF was 3% or lower. So we are alarmed by this, and that is why we propose for a period of 3 months temporarily to bring down the tariff. After that, it will be a bit higher before we revert to the normal level next year.
Thank you, Secretary. No, but still, 256,000 metric tons lang last year. And then, as you made mention earlier, many countries with ASF affected din sila. So, may shortage din po sila, hindi ba? And then, now that you are here, Secretary Carl, you've heard about the expose of Senator Lacson, yung inspections natin, yung regulation problems natin, etc. Would you still consider our appeal on looking into these figures and perhaps recommend to the President to at least suspend or aralin pang mabuti itong executive order na ito?
Mr. President, Senator Joel, when I joined NEDA about a year ago, we were observing this pattern already. We actually we tried our best. Department of Agriculture tried its best, I think, to address the problem without resorting to importation. We are at the moment where the inflation has moved so high already that we have to do more in parallel. I understand some of the concerns of the senators on the inspection, regulation, on customs. I propose we address the root cause of those problems and allow us also to help 95 million pork consumers who cannot afford to see much higher prices. So we will address the problem at the root cause po, whether it is the repopulation, helping the domestic, or addressing the regulatory side.
Thank you,
Mr.
Secretary
President.
Carlo. It's just that
Mr.
ang dating...
President.
With the permission of Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar, go ahead.
Really, we are in, thank you, Senator Villanueva and the Senate President. We are in conflict with the figures. Kasi talaga yung importation lang ng good meat is 120,000. That's the highest in 2018. In fact, last year, it's only 92,000. So we're talking of this only because the rest of the importation are offal and they have 5 to 10% tariff. So hindi na kailangan ibaba kasi 5 to 10% tariff. Whether they are offal or it's technical smuggling, we don't care. 5 to 10% tariff na yun. So we're talking of the 120,000 na 30 to 40% ang tariff. Pinagpipilitan nyo na 400,000. Yung 400,000, 70% nun, opal na, 5 to 10% na ang tariff. So bakit mo pa itataas yun? We're talking only of the good meat na 120,000. Kaya tama rin yung sinasabi ng stakeholder na ang total lang is kung halimbawa nawala nga yung 25%, as you said, ang namatay 125% with your previous report. Then you add 25% to 120,000, that's 150,000. Why are we talking of 400,000? And the rest naman is 5 to 10% tariff now. Why will you bring it down? Now, we don't know if those offal are really offal, but they're declaring it as offal. And it has low tariff already. Why are you bringing down the tariff of 400,000 metric tons? This is the history of importation. Ine-explain ko sa inyo. Sabi niyo sa akin, hindi ba mapipigil yung technical smuggling? Sino ba makakapigil no? Nagpasa na kami ng batas on smuggling. Wala namang nagawa. Di pag-usapan na lang natin yung talagang dineclare na importation na may 30 to 40% tariff. Huwag na natin pag-usapan yung importation na 5 to 10 na ang tariff. Kasi pareho na yun Mababa na tariff noon Why are we talking of 400,000? What we are talking about is 120,000 lang. And that's the history of importation in the Philippines. In fact, last year, it's only 92,000. Kasi bumaba na nga demand. Kasi nga kung ano ng problema hinarap natin, ang dami, bumaba na ang demand. Everywhere, demand has gone down because of our economic problem. So, bakit pinagpipilitan nyo na 400,000? Hindi ko talaga makita yung 400,000. I'm only seeing 120,000. Because yung the rest na 260,000, 5 to 10% na lang ang tariff noon. Bakit mo pa ibababa yun? Mababa na yun. So, why are you insisting on 400,000? That's my manifestation, Senate President and Senator Joel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Villar. The people here in the Senate Hall have a fairly good idea of the answer to your question, but we cannot say it publicly. Alam din nila yun. Senator Villanueva, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Last 2 points lang kay Yusek Carl, no? Sabi ng DOF, manageable ito. In your benefit cost analysis, did you assess the financing needs of the fight against ASF that could be funded with the foregone tariff revenues? For example, in our own calculation, itong test kits ng ASFV nano gold biosensor, 3.6 na yan, billion. Indemnification, 450,000 hogs. Assuming 8,000 direct loss per head, that's 3.6 billion. 200,000 units nitong chest freezers, 18,000 per unit, that's 3.6 billion. And then the 360 multiplier farms, with itong 60 so level capacity assuming a unit cost of 10 million. So ganun din po. I just wanted to find out, no, Secretary Carl.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Senator Joel. We looked at all this also, and what we are proposing is we help the consumers who consume pork, and at the same time help the industry. As I mentioned po, this is a 2-year problem already, almost 2 years, and it is unlikely to be resolved immediately. And it is right that we support the local hog producers, but we cannot let down also the consumers, because 95 million are going to see and are experiencing, Mr. Senator, a 35 to 59% increase in the price of pork. So we are very concerned also about them, as we are concerned about the hog industry.
Thank you, Secretary Carl. We hope that after the hearing, you will also consider our committee report and study our recommendations, Secretary. Magwawakas po ako by asking yung MAV-SEC natin. Is there any data showing how many importers underutilize their MAV allocation, and siguro yung list of MAV licensees who failed to meet 70% of their MAV allocation the past 3 to 5 years? Kasi doon makikita po natin kung naipapasa talaga nila ito, at ito nga ho, yung pinagkakakitaan, no? And lastly, yung how much MAV is confiscated and reallocated per year. Kung masasagot po ngayon, okay din. Kung hindi naman, okay lang din na isubmit, Mr. President. Thank you. Salamat po.
Mr. President, with the indulgence of Senator Joel.
May ano ako sa MAV.
Yeah, Senator Hontiveros, there was a manifestation that you wanted to do earlier. I'm sorry I was not able to recognize you right away.
It's all right, Mr. President. Salamat po ng marami. Actually po, timing din dahil yung interjection ko kanina kaugnay kay Senping ay kaugnay din ulit po ngayon kay Sen Joel. Following po kasi yung line of questioning ni Senping kanina at yung huling punto ngayon ni Sen Joel, napaisip po talaga ako, Mr. President, na kung yung bagong buong anti-profiteering, anti-hoarding, anti-smuggling task force binuo po ni Presidente noong Pebrero, baka may mas detalyadong reports pa na pwede nilang ibahagi dito sa ating Committee of the Whole. Kasi po sa line of questioning kanina ni Senping at itong huling punto ni Sen Joel, naisip ko po na we might as well have the entire taxonomy of smuggling practices para yung legislation po ay pwedeng mag-authorize nung paglikha ng mga mekanismo that will address the porousness of our borders. So for the record, Mr. President, and lastly at this point in time, dun po sa urgent concerns ng ating domestic hog industry, gusto po kasama ng Senate President, suportahan yung very impassioned call to action kanina ni Mr. Yota, no? Si Mr. Chester Warren Tan, na bigyan talaga natin ng fighting chance yung ating Filipino hog industry, na yun po ang intention po ng ating Senado. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President at Sen Joel.
Thank you, Senator Hontiveros. Senator Recto is offline, Senator Subiri is offline, and therefore the next in line is Senator Frank Dillon, the Minority Leader. Senator
President, just before that, I would just like to put on record my request for our MAB secretary to submit to us the data that I was asking for. Thank you.
The Secretary is hereby directed to submit to the committee.
Yes, sir. We will furnish him a copy of all of the ask.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. The Minority Leader, Senator Frank Dillon, is recognized.
Mr. President, 1 minute, just a short request. Senator Angara.
With the permission of Senator Dillon, Senator Angara.
Yes, with the permission.
Go ahead,
I'd
yes.
just like to, with the indulgence of Senator Dillon, thank you, Mr. President, and our colleagues. I just want to request the DA and Secretary Dar and Secretary Chua and any agency involved in the setting of the tariff to give us their calculations and their the data which led to their setting the tariff at 5% and 15% respectively. Could we request for that, Mr. President, detailed reasons? Thank you, Mr. President.
Secretary of Agriculture and the Secretary is advised to submit to Senator Angara and the committee the requested documents.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Senate President, yes, all the records are with the CTRM based with NEDA. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
So
President,
NEDA has all of it, and NEDA is directed to submit to us.
Mr. President, just a clarification. I'd like to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, Mr. President, why they advocated for this specific level of tariff on the part of the DA Secretary, because they have different mandates, Mr. President. Like the NEDA Secretary may be more interested in inflation, whereas the DA Secretary has the mandate to help our local producers, Mr. President.
All right, then Secretary Dar is directed to submit to the committee what you submitted to NEDA. All
Yes.
right, and why?
Mr. President,
All right.
thank you po. Thank you.
We'll do
Mr.
that.
President,
We will do that, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you.
Mr. President,
So, Senator Pangilinan,
yeah, Mr. President, together with Senator Risa Ontiveros earlier, I had requested that I be allowed to make a manifestation with the permission of the Senate President. Very quickly, Mr. President.
is that, yes, go ahead.
Yes,
With the permission of Senator Dillon.
Yes, and the Minority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Minority Leader. Very quickly, earlier, the presentation of Senator Lacson on the disparity or the disconnect or the figures that were not consistent, what was reported by the WTO and what was reported by the PSA. And in real terms, ito yung mga ginagawa ng sindikato. They will come in, for example, sa bigas, a shipment of 20,000 metric tons will come in. They will report the 10,000 metric tons, and the other 10,000 metric tons, yung mga kasabwat na BOC, hindi natin nilalahat pero hindi mangyayari yan kung walang kasabwat na BOC. Yung kasabwat na NFA, kasabwat na Department of Agriculture, lahat yan kasama. The other 10,000, yun yung ilalagay, i-unload at dadalhin na sa mga undisclosed warehouses. So in other words, ang nakareport 10,000 metric tons, pero ang pumasok 20,000, yung 10,000 na dagdag na walang record, yun ang pinupuslit, yun yung smuggled. Kaya ganyan ang disparity. Kaya napakahalaga na talagang babantayan yung proseso at yung pag-i-issuance ng permit and the like. Dahil hindi mangyayari yan kung walang kasabwat na mga tiwaling, mga opisyal o hindi kaya mga rank and file, mga inspector ng mga ahensyang sinasabi, Mr. President. For the record.
All right, thank you. We place that on record likewise. All right, so the Minority Leader, Senator Frank Dillon, you have 10 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Yes, just a few points. Number one, I assume it was Secretary Dar who recommended to the President to recommend to Congress the new level of the minimum access volume and the tariff rates. Is that correct? Is that a presumption correct, Mr. Secretary?
Mr. Chair, Senator Frank, let me again highlight yung proseso para mas maliwanag ulit. Kung pwede mamarapatin po ninyo, una dun sa MAB Plus, dito po sa Department of Agriculture nag-uumpisa at mayroon na MAB Secretariat at itong opisina na ito ay siya yung nagko-coordinate with the various organisms of the MAB in the DA. We have a Management Advisory Council na multi-stakeholdership ito. So dito idadaan yung initial thinking or recommendation.
Mr. Secretary, can I cut you short? So talagang it starts with the Department of Agriculture on the issue of whether or not the minimum access volume should be fixed.
Yes.
Po yan sa inyo.
Minimum access volume, yes, it starts from DA and we recommend to the President. Doon naman sa lowering
That's
of the
correct.
tariff, lowering of the tariff po,
Mm.
ay mayroon kaming request through the CTRM. Ito yung cabinet level Committee on Tariff and Related Matters. At ang chair po dito ay ang DTI Secretary at NEDA Secretary, co-chair. So ito ay iproproseso yon. So mayroon
All right.
engagement with Tariff Commission na where consultations are done and they bring back to the CTRM their recommendation.
All right.
So hindi,
Okay. But in both instances, it is obvious that the DA plays a critical role correctly because these are agricultural products. So my next question, Mr. Secretary, is when you made these recommendations and you participated in the process of decision making on the tariff and on the increase in the minimum accessible, did you consider and take into account the Senate Resolution number 97, which asked the President to declare a state of national emergency and opposed the proposed reduction of tariff rates and increase in the MAV? Did you ever consider that?
okay, let me highlight, Mr. Chair and Senator Frank. You know, ensuring food security of the country is a primary task of the Department of Agriculture. So there are 4 aspects when we talk of food security in the country. Number 1 is availability. Number 2 is affordability and accessibility. Number 3 is food safety. And number 4 is natural resource and resilience.
Excuse me, Mr. Secretary. With all due respect, my question is very simple. When you initiated the increase in the MAV and in the lowering of the tariff, did you take into account the position that the Senate expressed, sponsored by Senator Villar and Senator Pangilinan, Senate Resolution number 97, which clearly opposed the reduction of the tariff and the increase in the MAV of imported products? Did you consider that?
The process started as early in January and February. So we did not.
Just answer. I'm sorry, Secretary Dar, I want to be respectful to you. But my question is answerable by yes or no. Did you consider it?
As I've said, Your Honor, Mr. Chair, that's why I'm giving a predicate kasi that will answer the question. Sayang naman kung hindi ko pre-predicate. Yung umpisa nito, itong chronology of events started in January. So then the Senate resolution came later. So hindi namin na-consider na yun.
Okay.
So the answer is no.
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Okay.
The answer is no.
Po.
Now, Mr. Secretary, do you realize that under our system of laws, the setting of the minimum access volume and the tariffs are the functions of Congress, the exercise by the President of the power to increase the MAV and to lower the tariff are delegated authorities of Congress. That is why under our laws, the Congress, the Congress is authorized to withdraw that delegated authority insofar as setting of the tariffs, and the concurrence of Congress must be secured insofar as increasing the MAV. Are you aware of that, Mr. Secretary?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, Senator Frank, yes, we are aware.
And you are aware of that? You are aware, okay, since you are aware of that, why did you not even consider the position of the Senate insofar as this tariff and the MAV are concerned, when in fact these are the prerogatives and powers of Congress delegated only to the executive branch?
we followed the processes therein in said Republic Act, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman. So again, I answered the same question last time around.
So you just
What process, Secretary Dar, with the permission of Senator Dilo? What process? So you're saying that January pa pinag-aaralan nyo na to, di ba?
Okay. Yes, I can give you the chronology of events, Your
Okay,
Honor.
okay, all right. Sige nga, ang chronology, January, pinag-aaralan nyo na.
Opo,
Oh,
can I go?
February, may idea na kayo
Opo,
na gusto nyo gawin.
I can read through the chronology of events.
No, it's not necessary. Simplify na natin to. January, pinag-aaralan nyo na, sabi mo. February, more or less may idea na kayo. Ba't di nyo sinabmit sa amin? Eh kami dapat ang gumawa niyan. Inintay nyo yung March 26 na last day namin.
Yung proseso po ay very clear naman sa batas na we went through the MAB Advisory Council, the MAB Management Committee. I even presented to the cabinet, and that's where the last part would be the president.
Dun sa before the last part, before you submitted it to NEDA and the president, that means the point of Senator Dilo is kailan nyo na-desisyonan? Yan, sa chronology events niyo, kailan nyo na-desisyonan na isasubmit?
Opo, ito po. On February 3, the Secretary reported to the Cabinet meeting its recommendations to increase the MAB volume in order to augment the local supply of pork. So, yung interagency submitted the report on the pork supply and its recommendations, including increasing MAB volume last January 25, 2021. Ito po yung...
Okay. So, kailan nyo natanggap yung resolution ng Senate na hindi nyo kinonsider?
Well, it did not consider because the process has been,
No, that is not the, I bring it back to Senator Drilon. He knows that is not the process. The process, it comes from us. Dapat kami. Delegated lang yun. Ganon kasimple yung labanan. Senator Drilon, go ahead.
We hope that we consulted the same law. That the process we did was really to observe that Republic Act.
Yes, you observe the process. However, what you failed to do is you did not take into account the sentiment of Congress from where this authority emanates. The president's power is a delegated power of Congress. Congress, and particularly the Senate, has expressed its sentiment as a lawmaking body and as the principal agency in setting MABs and tariff. It is opposed to the increasing of the MAB and decreasing the tariff. But it is clear, it is clear that notwithstanding this knowledge that you have, you just simply ignored Congress and went through the process. You already knew, as you said, that it is the power of Congress delegated to the president. The president and the Senate said we are completely opposed to this in the resolution which we passed. That is why, just to reconfirm that, under the Republic Act 8178, it is expressly provided that in the event that Congress fails to act on the recommendation of the president, the increase in the MAB is deemed approved. So that is a recognition that it emanates from Congress. Number two, insofar as the tariff rates are concerned, it is also very clear that the power to set tariff and I quote the law, the power herein delegated may be withdrawn or terminated by Congress through a joint resolution. So, to me, you said you studied the law. It is clear from the law that it is a prerogative and power of Congress delegated to the president. You were in possession of a Senate resolution which completely opposed the MAV increase and the reduction of the tariff rate, and yet you just simply ignored and did not and simply ignored this this authority or this sentiment of where the power emanates, and yet you just continue to proceed, and I see no other rationalization except that the process has started. I don't think this is valid. In any case, Mr. President, I would like to think that this input on a legal power of the president and the power of Congress should be inputted in the committee report, because yes, we could not do anything because we are not in session now, but let me inform the secretary that on May 17, when we come back, we will propose to the Senate as an institution that we withdraw this power of the president to set tariff rates because of the harm it has done to the hog industry. That when you lowered, when the president exercised the power to lower the tariff. As I said, the law is very clear. The power to set tariff rates is a delegated power, which may be withdrawn or terminated by Congress through a joint resolution. So that when we cannot do anything now because we are not in session. But on May 17, Mr. President, I am giving notice that I will file a proposed joint resolution which will withdraw the power of the president to set the tariff insofar as the hog industry is concerned. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. For the record, we have been in contact with most of the members of the majority through our Viber group. For the record, Mr. Minority Leader, we concur 100%, or perhaps 99%. We're not sure about one or two. All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
All right. So, but that is your proposal for May 17. But
Yes.
there is nothing that prevents the Committee of the Whole to enact a resolution expressing the sense of the Committee of the Whole. Because
Yes, Mr.
this is
President.
the entire Senate, Mr. Minority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, I concur with the view of the Senate President. We can, in fact, pass a resolution which will urge the President to withdraw this reduction in the tariff rate and to restore the minimum access volume to its levels before these issuances. With your concurrence, Mr. President, I am prepared at the end of this session to present the pertinent resolution to the Committee of the Whole, which will urge the President to withdraw this, and if nothing happens, if nothing happens by May 17, then we have to take a more affirmative action of withdrawing the authority of the President, because that is allowed under our laws. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you, Senator Drilon, the Minority Leader. Are you up with your time? We will await your proposal later in the day. Pwede
Yes,
rin yun,
Mr.
if
President.
you prepare.
Yes, we are prepared on that, Mr. President. Just set it for debates on the floor, and we are prepared to make the appropriate motion.
Oh, ngayon? Why don't you propose it now?
We can do it, Mr. President.
We're not counting it in your time.
Upon your direction, Mr. President, as chair of the Committee of the Whole, we can now present a motion to adopt a resolution urging the President to withdraw Executive Order number 128, temporarily modifying the rates of import duty on fresh, chilled, or frozen meat of swine, and recall the recommendation to increase the minimum access volume. This is a resolution which will urge the President. Now, if nothing is changed until May 27, then we take a more affirmative action of withdrawing the authority of the President to
17.
May 17. If nothing is done by May 17, then we can exercise the authority of Congress to withdraw that delegated authority of setting the tariff rates. So we are ready, Mr. President, with your, if you say so, that it is now proper to do it.
All right. Is that a motion?
So move. Second.
Yes, Mr. President, we can now present the resolution if need be. So, Mr. President, thank you very much. You know, as I said earlier, when Congress was no longer in session, the President sent Congress a letter to convey his proposal to increase the minimum access volume, or MAV, to 350,000 metric tons from the present level of 54,210 metric tons. On April 7, Executive Order 128 was signed by the President, temporarily reducing the rates of import duty on fresh, chilled, or frozen meat of swine for a period of 1 year. As we have been discussing on the past two sessions, the EO reduced the in-quota tariff rate from 30% to 5% for the first 3 months and 10% for from the 4th to the 12th month, and for out-quota tariff rate of 40% to 15% for the first 3 months and 20% from the 4th to the 12th month. Mr. President, these two policies, as we have seen in the last 2 days of our session of the Committee of the Whole, can potentially spell the demise of our local hog industry, most of them being what we call backyard hog raisers. Nag-aalaga po lang ng baboy para ibenta sa merkado para po pambili ng pagkain. Our local hog raisers suffer a double blow, a double whammy, and to borrow Senator Lacson's description of the predicament of our local and backyard hog raisers, na double dead sila. Botsa ang dalawang pulisiyang ito na gustong ipatupad ng Department of Agriculture. So what do we do, Mr. President, with botsa or double dead meat? In this case, double dead policies. We propose, Mr. President, to recall them come May 17. But in the meantime, we propose this resolution, which will urge the President to withdraw EO 128. The resolution, as we said, will also state that should it be necessary, because things would not have changed or would not change by May 17, if necessary, to approve in plenary the appropriate resolution fixing the tariff rates and minimum access volume when we come back on May 17. Mr. President, the Supreme Court in the case of Southern Cross Cement Corporation versus Cement Manufacturers Association of the Philippines categorically held that the power to fix tariff rates and import quotas fall within the realm of the power of taxation, a power which is the sole province of the legislature under our Constitution. Mr. President, I have prepared a proposed resolution, a draft of a proposed resolution, which I may request, with your permission, the Committee of the Whole Secretary to read for the record this proposed resolution. With your permission, may I ask our Committee Secretary to read for the record the proposed resolution.
The Senate Secretary is directed to read the proposed resolution.
18th Congress of the Republic of the Philippines, Second Regular Session, Senate, Committee of the Whole. Resolution urging the President to withdraw Executive Order Number 128, Series of 2021, temporarily modifying the rates of import duty on fresh, chilled, or frozen meat of swine, and to recall the recommendation to increase the minimum access volume of pork. Whereas on 15 March 2021, the Senate adopted Resolution Number 97, urging the President to declare a state of national calamity due to the severe impact of the African swine fever, ASF, and opposing the proposed reduction of the tariff rates and the increase in the minimum access volume, MAV, of imported pork products. Whereas on 26 March 2021, citing a projection that the country will have 388,790 metric tons of deficit in pork supply for 2021, President Rodrigo Roa Duterte wrote Senate President Vicente C. Soto III and recommended the increase in the MAB for pork by 350,000 metric tons, in addition to the current MAB of 54,210 metric tons for the year 2021, in order to immediately augment the supply of pork, stabilize the increasing prices, and address the pressing issues of food security in the country. Whereas on 7 April 2021, the President issued Executive Order Number 128, temporarily modifying the rates of import duty on fresh, chilled, or frozen meat of swine under Section 1611 of the Customs Modernization and Tariff Act, Republic Act Number 10863, for a period of 1 year, reducing the in-quota tariff rate from 30% to 5% for the first 3 months, and to 10% for the 4th to 12th month, and reducing the out-quota tariff rate from 40% to 15% for the first 3 months, and 20% for the 4th to 12th month. Whereas industry members and experts believe that the reduction of import duty and the increase in MAB will not necessarily translate to lower pork prices, and that such policies will only result in loss of billions of government revenue and the flooding of the market with imported pork. Whereas the Department of Agriculture failed to satisfactorily establish through accurate and reliable data that the country will have 388,790 metric tons of deficit in supply of pork for the year, which necessitates the increase in MAB. Whereas the power to fix tariff rates and import quotas fall within the realm of the power of taxation, a power which is within the sole province of the legislature under the Constitution, and it is Congress which authorizes the President to impose tariff rates, import and export quotas, tonnage and wharfage dues, and other duties or imposed, and that such authorization can be exercised only within the specified limits set in the law, and is further subject to limitations and restrictions which Congress may impose. Southern Cross Cement Corporation versus Cement Manufacturers Association of the Philippines. Whereas Section 6 of the Agricultural Tariffication Act, Republic Act Number 8178, which provides that the President's recommendation to revise, modify, or adjust the MAV in case of shortages or abnormal price increases in agricultural products is deemed approved if Congress fails to act after 15 days from receipt, is not applicable in this case, because the President's recommendation was sent to and received by the Senate when it was no longer in session and thus cannot act on the recommendation. Whereas Section 1608 of the Customs Modernization and Tariff Act, Republic Act Number 10863, specifically provides that the delegated power of the President to reduce import duties may be withdrawn or terminated by Congress through a joint resolution. Whereas from the testimonies of the resource persons during the 12 April 2021 hearing of this committee, there is no reasonable basis to conclude that the new set of tariff rates and the huge increase in the MAB can cause the demise of the local hog industry and cost the government billions in foregone revenues, and must therefore be reviewed by the President. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate, sitting as a committee of the whole, to urge the President to withdraw Executive Order Number 128, which provides for the temporary modification of the rates of import duty for fresh, chilled, or frozen meat of swine, and to recall the recommendation to increase the minimum access volume of pork. Resolved further for the Senate, if and when necessary, to approve in plenary the appropriate resolution fixing the appropriate tariff rates and minimum access volume of pork. Adopted.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Just for the record, apart from this representation, 16 other senators have manifested their desire to be co-authors. No less than the Senate President has manifested his desire to co-author this proposed resolution, and also the following Senators Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, Ontiveros, Lapid, Lacson, Marcos, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Poe, Recto, Revilla, Villanueva, Villar, and Subiri. Mr. President, may I now therefore move for the unanimous consent of the Committee of the Whole for the adoption of the proposed resolution.
Yes, for the record, Senator Angara, I think, and Senator Gordon manifested their desire to also be co-authors of the said resolution. So for the record.
Yes, I would be. It would be an honor to include our two colleagues as co-authors, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Chair hears none. The resolution is adopted. Do you still have 2 minutes, Mr. Minority Leader, or would you like to give it up?
He can give it to Mr. President if he's willing.
I yield my time to any of my colleagues, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you, Minority Leader. The next is Senator Francis Pangilinan.
Yes, Mr. President, may I know if this Minority Leader is willing to give me the 2 minutes that he has in case I need more time, Mr. President.
Yes, you have 10 minutes plus the 2 minutes, 5 seconds of the Minority Leader. You have 12 minutes, 5 seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Minority Leader. Magandang araw po sa kanilang lahat. My first set of questions is for NEDA Secretary Carl Chua. Is he still here?
Mr. President, I am here.
Yes, hi, Secretary. Secretary Carl, you know, earlier, as I understood it, you were concerned about precisely the high prices, the inflation rate in the prices of pork, and you know, compared it to the inflation rate and the high prices of rice, which led to precisely opening up and addressing the shortage by way of importation. Forgive me, but I think comparing the rice industry situation in 2018 or 2019 and the hog industry situation today is comparing apples and oranges. And I think it's a bit simplistic to do so. Number one, the rice sector was not facing a calamity and losses of around 60 billion pesos because of the African swine flu. Number two, the RCEF, the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund, was made available so that the rice farmers could get the necessary cash assistance and support as in anticipation of the entry of imported rice. There is no such competitiveness enhancement fund for the hog industry. In fact, you have not yet declared. The Executive Department has yet to declare the state of emergency. That will hopefully free up some funds. Third, the rice sector then was not facing COVID. Today, you have the hog industry facing COVID. So all these, forgive us, Mr. Secretary, seems to ignore, you know, the plight of the hog industry given all the challenges that it is facing. Can we get your comment on this? Was this factored in? Apart from that, Mr. President, the good secretary, did the NEDA consider the allied industries that will be affected by the importation of so much meat, pork, the feeds industry, the transport logistics industry of the hogs, of the local hog industry. Plus, the difference between rice, Mr. President, and pork is that rice is a staple. There's no alternative. Pork will have an alternative. And therefore, pagkakulang ang pork, pwedeng bumili ng manok. Yung ating mga kababayan. Ito ba ay na-consider din? Because ngayon, it would have been an added benefit for our local chicken industry, poultry industry, but now that too is gone because we will now flood the market with imported frozen pork. So ang daming apektado nitong policy ng 404,000 metric tons of pork importation.
Thank you very much, Senator Kiko. Mr. President, if I may answer the three.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. On the first one, indeed, we cannot compare rice and pork. I would just like to highlight in my presentation that the inflation effect of meat or pork rather is much higher, therefore requiring even more action. And NEDA from the start has been a proponent of supporting the domestic hog producers foremost, and we have not resorted to any importation until this time after almost 2 years. And I think the problem is severe enough. The inflation has risen so much. That is why we want to complement the support to the hog producers. If the support is not enough, we support the need to give them more support. On the second one, Mr. President, on the allied services, we did consider that also. However, we also considered the 95 million Filipinos who would rely on pork. And although, as suggested by the industry, that demand might have fallen to 10, we disagree because, as I mentioned, people are still eating pork. The data shows. And we have accepted almost 1 million OFWs in the last year, and they are eating also pork. So that adds to the demand. And finally, Mr. President, on the inflation of the other products, we have seen since 2018 that rice, fish, meat, vegetables, fruits have been the key drivers of inflation. Fortunately, with the rice tarification, we have addressed the rice. But we are still seeing right now, March 2021, meat as number 1, followed by transport of services, and then fish, and also vegetable. So the options, I think, Mr. President, of shifting to other food is very limited also. That is why, again, we are proposing that we support the industry, but after 2 years, we have shown that it is not enough, and we have to do something more. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, do you have a position on the state of calamity declaration that the Senate has been urging the President to issue an executive order?
Well, I think the situation is critical to recognize that we have a calamity.
And therefore, you support it?
May I read and consult in detail?
Yes, okay. But in principle, you see the importance of a state of calamity declaration, because we have to free up funds from the calamity fund to provide the necessary support. The Secretary of Agriculture has already said he needs 8.6 billion for 2021 to address the swine fever, and he only has 2.6 or 4 billion. Kulang pa ng 7 or 8 billion. Saan niya kukunin yun? So I hope you can bring this to the attention of the economic cluster, that perhaps they should also urge the President. Dapat sana yun ang makakatulong in the same way that you have the competitiveness enhancement fund, the cash assistance for your rice farmers precisely because of the influx of imported goods. And the studies all show that talagang tatamaan sila. And we don't need the studies to know that the local hog industry is already in pain, is already in death throes. So we hope you can be able to urge the economic cluster to come up with a common position on the state of calamity declaration. Hindi po ba? Because you have already endorsed the importation of 400 million kilos. What now is your position to support the hog industry locally, the economic team. Hindi po ba?
Yes, Mr. President, Senator Kiko. I understand the situation is already in a critical stage. So I will read again the position and consult and see how we can best help the industry. At the same time, helping the consumers.
Yes, of course. Salamat. We saw that with the rice farmers. We saw that the importations would affect their incomes. And the same will happen. And therefore, we should be able to provide the assistance necessary for the hog industry. Thank you. I now go to the issue of the in quota and out quota. And this is addressed to Secretary 𝘬𝙧𝙧𝙗. Secretary, we'd like to understand how we came up with the 350 metric tons endorsement when on February 1, how did the shift happen? There is a memorandum for the Secretary, February 1, dated 2021, February 1. And the recommendation actually of your interagency committee in relation to the planned increase in the minimum access volume or MAV allocation through the MAV plus mechanism. So if I may read, number 2, while the committee, and this is a committee composed of 𝘕𝙬𝙘𝗪, Director Morales, Attorney Jane Bacayo, Director Salvador, and Director Domingo. So pretty much all your directors are endorsed this, no? I could be mistaken, but maybe a number of them. All those that are around you now. Number 1, while on number 2, it says, while the committee finds a deficit in the country's pork supply for 2021, it does not recommend the immediate increase in the MAV in view of the parallel move to temporarily reduce the tariffs on pork. In other words, dahil ibababa naman yung taripa sa pork, wag nyo nang i-expand yung MAV. Yun yung number 1. Keep it at 54,000 metric tons, hindi ba? Pero sabi niya, number 2, or number 3, however, if the department opts to invoke the MAV plus mechanism while the tariff modification process is ongoing, an additional MAV of around 100,000 may be a reasonable number to augment the supply. So your committee recommended na wag nang i-increase yung MAV from 54,000 to 400, whatever, 400,000 or 350,000. Wag nang i-increase. At dagdag doon, kung i-increase, 100,000 lang. Who decided to set this aside and recommend, number 1, to increase it to 350, and number 2, ayun, di ba? Na i-increase, tapos, imbis na 100,000, 350. Kasi sabi, wag mo nang i-increase. 54,000, okay na yan. Pero kung i-increase mo, 100,000. Ang nangyari, in-increase ng 350,000.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Secretary Tar, please.
Yeah, can I ask Noel Padre, who submitted that letter, to put the context para maliwanagan po lahat? ASEC Noel Padre is here with us.
Okay, we recognize the Assistant Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Noel Padre. Indeed, Mr. Chair, we submitted this recommendation to the Secretary on February 1. And in this recommendation, we noted that 388,790 metric tons shortfall estimated deficit in the pork supply for 2021. And we also noted in the same memo, in the same report, that there is a parallel move to reduce the tariff At the time, it was for the first 6 months, 5% for INCOTA. That would be the one covering this MAP Plus proposal. And then 15% and 10% for the next 6 months.
Yes,
And,
yes.
however, at that time, Mr. Chair, there was no clarity as to whether this proposal will prosper. So on February 3, we reported this the same recommendation to the DA Management Committee in the morning of February 3. And we presented this, the deficit. And during that meeting, we discussed as to whether magpo-propose ng MAB Plus or mag-tariff tariff lang. And the agreement with the MANCOM was to propose to the MAB Management Committee to increase the MAB by 350,000 metric tons, Mr. Chair, to address this deficit of 308,000 metric tons.
Who in the MANCOM suggested that?
Sir, it was a decision by the MANCOM.
Yes, but who? So nobody recommended it? They just all together decided, no, let's all increase it to 350? Ganun yun? Nobody could, may minutes ba kayo ng MANCOM meeting nyo? Meron ba?
It was decided, Mr. Chair, that we recommended the increase in the MAB by 350,000 metric tons to cover this deficit of 388,000 metric tons.
Yes, I understand that. But that was not your recommendation, si Padre. Your recommendation is not to lift it. Leave it at 54,000. And if you have to raise it to 100,000. Di ba? That was your recommendation. Your committee. Tama?
Opo,
Yeah,
pero
that's in your letter. Okay, okay. And I understand why ayaw mo yung itaas ng 54,000. Hayaan nyo na muna yun. Kasi ibababa na natin ng 5%. Ibababa na natin ng 15%. So ang posibleng mangyari, doon pa lang sa 5% at pagbaba ng 15%, pwede nang abutin yung 388,000. Tama ba? Na import. Tama ba?
There was no clarity yet on the proposal to reduce the tariffs. There was no public hearing.
Yes, there was no clarity, but that was what the discussion was. Kasi sa memorandum ninyo, wait. Yung memorandum ninyo, in quota, 1 to 6 months, 5%. 7 to 12 months, 10%. Ando na. You may not say, wala pang final decision, pero pinag-uusapan na ibababa. Kaya nagpo-project na kayo na pag binaba natin ng 5 at binaba natin ng 15, chances are, yung mga importer kakagat na yan. At maaring 388 yung metric tons na supply na kinakailangan, baka doon pa lang pumasok na. Baka. Bayro, sabi ninyo, pero kung hindi, baka pwede natin itaas ng 100,000.
Discussion during the MANCOM, Mr. Chair, centered on the deficit that we report.
Yes, I understand that. But you already said
the discussion.
There is a reason why you did not want to move the 54,000 because your experience in the last several years is that talagang mag-i-import itong mga importers sa ganyang halaga. Kaya yung 388,000 talagang posible. We're not saying, wait, okay? We're not saying it will happen. But there is a rationale behind why you didn't want to move it. Because your experience tells you, posible na mapupuno na ng supply yung 388 sa ganong halaga. Hindi kailangan. Baka hindi kailangan. Okay, I'm not saying, baka hindi kailangan. Anyway, the MANCOM saw it otherwise. Tama? And therefore said, hindi.
It's a decision by them.
For one reason or another, they disregarded your recommendations and said, no, let's just get all the 388 in and peg it at 350 for a MAB plus. That's what happened, right?
The discussion during the management committee meeting, Mr. Chair, was on the deficit and as to how to address
Yes,
this.
yes, yes. I know. But your recommendation, you mean to say your recommendation? You mean to say your wait, ASEC, you mean to say your recommendation did not include filling up the deficit? It did. It did. No. This is, wait, sandali Iba yung position ng Mancom, iba yung position ninyo. Tama. Di ba? Kasi iba yung recommendation ninyo. Pero, ibig mo sabihin, yung recommendation ninyo, andun sa recommendation ninyo yung 388 So, alam ninyo yung deficit. Alam ninyo. Kaya nga sabi nyo, kahit na may deficit na ganyan, wag muna natin itaas. Yun ang recommendation ninyo. I'm just going by your documents. Now I'm wondering, and that's the question.
Yes, Mr.
Okay, but the point is,
I'm
sorry, no, but the point is, your recommendations were overridden, di ba? And then, yun na nga. Hindi mo kasalanan yun, basta yun ang recommendation. I just want the facts, di ba? Anyway, having said that,
can I request Dr. Eldrin Morales again to give us the facts why this deficiency? We should be able to understand. So, Director Morales, can you present the facts para malinawan naman lahat? The whole idea is there is a deficiency. So that is the basis. So, Director Morales, please. And before that, while they are sharing the PowerPoint, Mr. Chairman, for the information of Senator Kiko, in regard to the state of calamity vis-a-vis the occurrence of PSF, nakatanggap ako ng sulat galing sa Executive Secretary na kino-consider na itong state of calamity, and we just need a recommendation from the NDRRMC. So yun po ang latest po doon sa state of calamity.
Thank you for that update, Secretary. Go ahead, with the permission of the Chair, Director Morales.
Okay, we recognize Director Morales. Yes, sir. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, in this screen, we simply compared the swine inventory of 2020 January, 21 January, wherein we can see, Mr. Chair, that there is a reduction of 24% from 12.7 million in 2020 to 9.7 million in 2021. Sir Chair, it translates to 3 million hogs swine inventory that was reduced in 2021. Next slide, please. Yun pong 9.7 million heads, Mr. Chair, will produce 21 million fattener pigs. At yun naman pong 21 million fattener pigs will produce 1.2 million metric tons of meat. Next slide, please. In one slide, Mr. Chair, we would like to show that yun pong nawala na 3 million heads or 25% of the contracted population ay around 10 to 20% po niyan. Nagpunta na lang po tayo sa 10% ay breeder. At yan pong 3 million na yan with 300,000 breeders will be able to produce 5.5 million fattener pigs per year. Yan po yung nawala. Kung i-compute po natin yung 5.5 million fattener pigs per year na nawala, yan po ay the equivalent to 388,790 metric tons. At yan po yung i-consider nating deficit. Kasi po, yun pong 9.7 naman, magpuproduce ng 21 million fattener pigs, ang kaya po niyang i-supply ay around 1.2 million. Ngayon, Mr. Chair, ang projection po natin, kaya po na nabanggit ni Secretary 𝙁𝙘𝙪𝙀 kanina, yun pong ating per capita consumption, kapag po kinumpute natin yan sa current population, we are looking at a demand of 1.6 million metric tons. So yun pong kakulangan doon sa 1.6 total demand as against dun po sa locally kayang i-produce na 1.2. Ayan po yung nasa taas ng 388,790,000 metric tons, Mr. Chair. So yun po yung basis po lamang. At meron pong life cycle model po. This is just the linear analysis lang po, estimates. Next slide, please. Ito po siya, Mr. Chair. 300,000 breeders po yung nandun sa million. Kaya niya pong i-produce yung 5.4 million piglets, which in return is about 400 million metric tons kapag ka po ini-round up. Next slide, please. Next slide. Ito naman po yung natira po natin na 9.7. Ang tinitingnan po natin sa 970 million yung breeders. So yan po yung magiging kakulangan niyan ay around 400 metric thousand. Base po dun sa ating computer 6 million metric tons na ating need.
Well, actually, I understand, no? Wala naman tayong debate dun sa 388 metric tons in terms of supply. Ang issue dito dapat ba in-increase yung MAV plus o dapat na lang dun sa out quota na lang kinuha? Kasi historically, lagi namang mas malaki yung out quota. So ibig sabihin, kayang punuin yung supply na 300, yung shortage ng supply kahit hindi mo i-increase yung MAV para magkaroon ng mas magandang benepisyo yung importer. Binigyan nyo ng dagdag na incentive yung importer na kung hindi mo naman binigyan ng dagdag ng incentive, mag-i-import pa rin Yun ang point ko. We're not debating on the supply. What we're looking at now is why did you include an additional 350? Diba? In-increase nyo from 54 to 350 para mabawasan yung taripa. Di ba? Yun ang point. Bakit nyo kung magbabayad naman ng taripa? That anyway, my time is almost up, or it's probably but just
Yes, I was about to inform the distinguished senator, but you can wrap up, Senator Kiko.
But that's already 12 minutes. Ang bilis pala, no?
Yes, yes, dear colleague, we have a timing, including the extra 4 minutes given by the minority. But you can wrap up, sir. You can wrap up, Senator Kiko, please.
But this is critical, no? Because this is where maybe the rubber meets the road that needs to be clarified. The submissions of the Department of Agriculture for 2020, they were able to import 256 million kilos of pork. This is their submission. Importation yan from the BAI. The BOC has the document that last year, 2020, 225 million 661 metric kilos ang na-import ng pork. So, sobra ng 30 million kilos yung data ng DA. Ibig sabihin, hindi dumaan sa BOC. 30 million kilos, walang record or kulang ang record ng BOC. Kung walang record ng BOC, yung ba is smuggled? Can we get the response of both?
Senator Kiko.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, yun pong datos po ng Bureau of Animal Industry ay nakabase lamang po yun doon sa SPSIC po na in-issue na kapag dumating po yung shipment, i-check lang po namin kung yun pong nakasulat na total volume po na ni-request sa SPS ay siya rin po ba yung dumating. Kapag ka po yung nag-match po yun po yung dinedata na po namin yun po yung ipinapasok namin na data as actual arrival on our site, Mr. Chair. So yun po yung pinanggalingan po nung datos po ng Bureau of Animal Industry, Mr. Chair, and we stand by our data po. Thank you.
So even if it's smuggled,
Mr. President,
even if it's smuggled,
Mr. President, can I intercede? This is Senator
Yes.
Villar.
Go ahead, Senator Villar.
In 2020, it's the good meat is 92,000 and the opal is 153 to make a total of 256. So, ipinasok din nilang opal with a what you call this, tariff of 5 to 10%. So pumasok yon, pero ang tariff nun 5 to 10%. Yun ang sinasabi ko na hindi naman nila dinideclare na MIP opal And the tariff is already 5 to 10%. So hindi na dapat ibaba yung tariff kasi mababa na yun. Ang dineclare lang nilang good meat in 2020 is 92,000. 92,000.
So yung bill,
Yun ang difference. Oo. Hindi nila dinedeclare. Kaya sinasabi ko, hindi na kailangan ibaba tariff kasi mababa na ang tariff. Talaga naman ang ini-import is something like 388 in 2018 Ganyan Kaya lang, yung 260 dinideclare na opal at 120 lang yung dinideclare na good meat na merong ano tawag dito, what you call this, may tariff na 30 to 40%. Parang 30% lang ng meat ang dinideclare para doon sa tariff na 30 to 40%. The rest, dinideclare ng opal na ang tariff is 5 to 10%. But all accounted for. Kaya hindi ako nagugulat dyan sa projection nila na yan. Kaya lang, sinasabi ko sa kanila, bakit mo ibababa pa tariff mababa na tariff. Whether they are really opal or good meat, mababa na tariff niya. Why do you have to bring it down?
yes. With the permission, ma'am, with the permission,
Thank you very much.
Just the answer of BOC. Why is your data 30 million kilos less than the data of the BAE?
Yes, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Senator Pangilinan. Sir, ang record po ng BAOC is actual importation. Tama po yung sinabi ng BAE. Ang records po kasi nila is SPSIC. Hindi po lahat ng na-issue ng SPSIC ay dumarating po as importation, kaya meron pong discrepancy.
So ano siya? Nire-record nila na 30 million extra pero hindi pumasok?
Hindi po. Sa record po nila, base sa SPSIC na inition nila, 30 million at 256 million kilograms po ang importation. Ang imported meat na supposed to be na inisyohan nila SPSIC.
Kasi
customs po, 225 lang po talagang na pumasok na importation. Ibig sabihin, 225 million kilograms worth of SPSIC lang po yung dumating sa amin.
So ibig sabihin, meron 30 million na naka-record na imported na hindi dumating?
Opo, hindi pa po na ina-avail yung SPSIC.
Normal naman.
So sobra-sobra ng 30 million. SPI, yung inisyo lang nila. Well, you have to reconcile that, no? Because mukhang, parang ba't ganun? May pumasok na sa inyo na 225, sa kanila may nag-import ng 256. I think you have to clarify that, no?
The 200, may I intercede, Senator Pangilinan? The record of BOC says 256,000 ang pumasok nung 2020.
256 million kilograms po, ma'am.
256, 1,000 metric tons. Billion yun, times 1,000. Pero in metric tons. Pero pumasok yun. Kaya lang, 70% non opal, hindi good meat.
So, bakit dito 225 million? And this
Ito nakalagay sa report nila
baka ni-reconcile na ninyo kasi we raised that already the last time. Here, ito, Bureau of Customs, 225. So,
ito ang record nila binigay sa akin.
Yes, ma'am. And with the permission of the Senate President, just one more slide, Mr. President, because I think this is also critical for the...
All right, good.
Yes, one more slide. And this is the question of who are allowed to import? What is the process of accreditation? Can we present that? I believe we gave it to the Secretariat. Yung usapin ng pork importers capitalization. Tinignan namin lahat ng...
Ligay mo na sa reposetas.
Ayan.
Isalin mo, may ano pa doon, may papaya pa doon, pagsamahin na lang din.
Ito we went through the different corporations that imported last year, 2020. Itong Technofarm Agriculture, ang kanyang paid-up capital is 6.25 million. Pero ang na-import niya ay 1,104,000,000. at tapos siya ay na-incorporate 2019. So, I'm not, baka naman legitimate ito, I don't know, no? But incorporated in 2019, walang track record, pero nakapag-import ng 1 billion pesos worth. No? So that's something that has to be looked at. How did they get that? Kung sinasabi nyo, merong matatagal na nandyan since 1998, paano biglang noong 2019 merong 1 billion? The other is, 2018, and this was mentioned by Senator Lacson earlier, 2018 incorporated, di ba? Tapos 440 million pesos worth of importation with a 5 million paid up capital. So paano nyo sinasala? Paano ito? Kaka-incorporate lang noong 2018, nakapag-import na ng 450 million pesos worth. Ito naman 2019, 1 year, di ba? Tapos naka 1 billion na. So these are, that's why it's important for the transparency in the reporting, no? Baka pwedeng i-clarify ano yung proseso nung pag-approve nung isang kaka-incorporate pa lang, nakapag-import na ng 1 billion.
Dr. Salvador po from NMIS.
Yes.
Sir, kami po ang in charge po sa accreditation ng importers. Nung inamend po namin yung accreditation po, it came from the importers na ang kailangan po nilang paid up capital is 5 million po para po makapag-import po sila. So yun po ang nilagay po namin, but that doesn't mean po na ang explanation po kasi nila sa amin, paid up capital lang po yun, pero meron po silang mga letter of credit po sa bank na kinakailangan po nila in order to do the importation process. And yung sa importation po, sir, yung na-mention niyo po na Technofarm, they are not MAV licensees, they are regular importers po. So probably most of their importations are OFALs po, kasi yun po ang talagang marami pong importation na dumadating, yung mga low tariff. Pero it's for the past 5 years po, they are not accredited by the MAV Secretariat. They do not belong to the MAV licensees po.
So yung 11, and this is my last. Well, ang question ko lang talaga is, we'd like to see your rules, no, and the requirements.
Sir, yes, sir, we will furnish your office of all of the requirements as well as the process po.
Yes, so that we make sure that it is as transparent, accountable, and diba, and for everyone to see, no. And I will reiterate, kung pwede niyong gawin online, real-time online, pinopost lahat itong mga information na ito para mabusisi nating lahat.
Sir, we're on the process of doing the online importation, and yung lahat po ng accredited importers po namin are posted in our website. So you can view them po, including those under the MAV licenses, under the MAV po.
Does that include the members of the board and the owners?
Sir, yung pong mga, kasi we're already covered po by the Data Privacy Act. So yung mga nakalagay po doon, yung listing po namin ng valid importers po with their contact details, pero not all of them, yung pati po yung mga board of incorporators, we have them po in our offices but they are not posted po in the website.
Okay, we
all right,
just
therefore, if that is your reason, Data Privacy Act. Therefore, we direct the Senate Secretariat to get from the SEC all the people behind all the data behind this list of companies that presented by Senator Pangilinan.
The SEC certification po of good standing is a requirement po, and or a DTI registration. So I will furnish po the good senator a copy of our requirements and all of our the process po of accreditation. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Senator Pangilinan, go ahead. Wrap up.
Yes, well, just a point then, yung isang nabanggit nating pangalan doon, Sebas Litinel, yun din korporasyon na nabanggit ni Senator Lacson. No? So, pwedeng busisiin din ang gusto yun. I have no other questions, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Maraming salamat, Secretary Dar, and sa ating mga taga-Department of Agriculture. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yeah. There are resource persons that are seeking the floor. Two of them were invited by Senator Pia Cayetano. But so before we recognize Senator Pia Cayetano later, because next in line is Senator Villar, there is also a request from the Pork Federation for a manifestation. So former Congressman Nicky Brones, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you good afternoon sa lahat po ng ating mga senators. Una, nagpapasalamat po kami sa lahat ng bumubuo na Committee of the Whole. Doon po sa inyong resolution para po ma-recall yung 𝑒O 128 at saka po yung MAV+. So, isa po yung magandang pabor o inspirasyon sa amin pong mga magbababoy. At ang ating pong ipipresent ko po sa inyo, meron po tayong tariff reduction from 30 to 40 to 5%. Gusto ko po lang paalam sa inyo na ang mawawala po nating tariff dyan o revenue na dapat magamit natin sa ating mga magbababoy ay 13 billion, not less than 12 billion, kahit po doon sa ang tariff ay magiging 10%. Next. Yung pong ating imported na karning baboy, even at 40%, gusto ko po lang ipaalam sa inyo, ay ang presyo po ay $99.60, $2.10. Yan po ay canvas galing sa Spain and US. At ang presyo po ng import ng cost ay 151 pesos. So kahit hindi po ibaba ang tariff sa 5%, may kita na pong 118 pesos per kilo ang ating mga importers. Next. Ang gusto po nating ma-encourage ang mga local hog farmers to
Di bali na, nawala na.
yung pong i-recall po yung tama po yung dalawang 𝑒O 128, MAV+, ma-recall, magkaroon po ng indemnification ang ating infected hogs ng 10,000 per head. At yung pong PCIC insurance, bagamat kulang po kami sa tiwala dyan, at 3 billion lang ang nadinig kong kapital ng PCIC, kulang na kulang po yan. So kailangan po pagsabayin na. At yung pong technical smuggling, kailangan din po, at huwag pong gamitin yung 45 million government funds para po sa freezer. Lalo na po kung plano pang gawing 200,000 freezer ang bilhin. Yung pong 3.6 billion pinresent kanina ni Senator Kiko, ng isang senador, ay aabot po ng 3.6 billion. Ay makakatulong po yan sa ating mga indemnification ng ating baboy ng 10,000 per head. At kailangan po ay ma-encourage natin ang ating mga magbababoy na bumalik. Tigil din po yung technical smuggling. At yung pong i-practice yung Food Safety Act na sa first border pa lang ay magkaroon po ng laboratory testing kahit man lang po sa ESF at saka sa COVID. At ang outcome po nito, nag-ini-expect po natin na yung pong naiiwan nating 1,000 sows na alaga ng ating mga magbababoy, 1 million sows na alaga ng ating mga magbababoy sa kasalukuyan. Yan po ay kahit po kalahati lang at amin pong idagdag. 500,000 sows na pipili po ng isang inahinin na dumalaga at yan po yung mga anak ng 8 baboy na pwedeng patiner. Sa loob po ng isang taon, 4 million po yan. So makakabalik po kaagad yung supply ng baboy sa loob ng isang taon. At yan po ay 2 times po yan nanganganak. 2.3 times nanganganak po sa isang taon. So another 6 months, may another 4 million po. So ang total pong partners, 1.5 years, 8 million. Pero kung dahil po doon sa mga discouragement, Ay tama po si Chester, aabutin po tayo ng 5 taon. At kanina po, gusto ko lang pong tingnan yung ipinresent ng ating BAI director, yung pong na-reduce na 3 million hogs dahil sa ESF and then kailangan ng partner na 5.5. Mukhang mali po yung computation. Baka po pwede nating ibalik yung kaninang ipinresent na computation para doon sa nag-arrive ng 388,000 metric tons. Pwede po ba, Mr. President, na ibalik ng DA yung ipinresent kanina na nagkaroon ng reduction na 3 million heads and then kailangan ang nawawalang partner ay 5.5 million na partner para po, kasi mali po yung computation nila. Sa akin pong pagkakapag-compute, lumalabas po yung 3 million heads para sinasabi nila ay lahat iinahin nyo na wala. At mga kailangan ng partner na 5.5 million. Eh kung 3 million pong inahin yon, 2.3 times na manganganak po yan sa isang taon. Times 8 heads. Kada isang baboy ay may produce sa partner. Abay, abot po yan ng 55 million heads. So, pakipresent po, mukha pong may diferensya yung kaninang ipinresent na slides sa computation.
Sigurado may mali. Dahil nga nakikita natin. Pero we can look into the figures, former Congressman Nicky Briones. Ganito, papadaliin ko lang. So, pag marami nag-iintay, alam namin yung punto ninyo eh. Di na natin yung punto nyo. Ang punto ng mga hog raisers, ang gusto ninyo mabuhay. Di ba? Mag-survive. Tama ba? Para kumita kayo dahil may mga kumikita mga tao sa inyo. Tama ba?
Napakarami pong farmers na involved. Yung pong corn farmers, palay farmers, coconut, sugarcane, allied industries. Yan po. Yung sinasabi po, ang pinakamahalaga po, Mr. President.
Yan. Lumalabas na gano'n yung dahilan ninyo. Kaya kayo ay naririto at kumukontra diyan sa paglaki ng MAB at saka pagbaba ng taripa. Di ba?
Yes,
para kayo mabuhay. Ngayon, yung mga importers, ang gusto, lumaki kita nila. Tama po ba?
Tama po. Malaki na pa, dagdagan.
Ang tanong sa iyo, bakit hindi kayo kinampihan ng DA?
Yun po ang aming pinagtataka. Kami po ang kanyang sektor, kami po ang kanilang... Kaya po may Department of Agriculture dahil po sa magsasaka. Ay bakit po yung stand ng NEDA at saka ng mga economic managers, yung naging... siya pang nangunang nag-rekomenda. Ay yan po, kaya po nagagalit ang ating nasa sektor na agrikultura.
Alright, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Congressman Briones.
Last point lang po. Yung pong sinasabi ni Secretary 𝘾𝙧𝙤𝙬 na 95 million na consumer, Filipinos, pagka po nawala ang magbababoy, next year po, yung kawaawang sinasabi nila ay yung 95 million consumers natin. Ang ipinaglalaban po natin, milyong magsasaka, at yan po ating lahat ng consumer mamimili dito sa ating bansa. Food security po na galing sa ating magsasaka, yan po kailangan, hindi po imported. At baka dumating nga po walang ma-import. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President. Mabuhay po kayo at ating Committee of the Whole.
Basta malinaw na hindi lang kayo mga hog raisers ang naapektuhan dito, pati yung mga nabubuhay sa feeds at kung saan pa. All right, now next is Senator Cynthia Villar. Senator Villar, you're recognized. 10 minutes.
Mr. President, I will not ask questions anymore. I give my time to the others. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator Villar. Next is Senator Risa Ontiveros. Senator Risa, you have 10 minutes.
Salamat po, Mr. President. So, bago ko po tanungin kay Sec Dar, no, at least for the record, si DA Sec at yung kanilang mga opisyal, sumang-ayon na po sa ideya na mag-impose ng price ceiling sa imported frozen meat. Kasama dito, pumayag din po yung DEA na yung ating mga local producers at kanilang mga retailers ay price at will. Total meron ng mura ding imported na alternative kung di na kaya ng bulsa. So Secdar, meron po akong tatlong tanong sa inyo sa pag-operationalize nito. Una po, Sec, paano po malalaman ninyo sa DA at ng DTI na yung ibinebenta ay totoong ng bagong katay at hindi na defrost lang na nagpapanggap na bagong katay? Makikita po ba ito sa inyong mga field manuals at sa gabay ninyo sa mga local government units? Maaari po bang ipaabot nyo dito sa aming Committee of the Whole? Kasama na po yung opisina ko, yung impormasyon tungkol dito, Secdar.
Clarification lang po kung pwede, Mr. Chair and Senrisa. Are you referring to local butchering of local hogs or what?
Basta lahat po na ibebenta na bagong katay, fresh.
Okay.
Na local, of course.
Po dumaan sa mga accredited slaughterhouses, nandyan po ang selyo ng National Meat Inspection Service.
Alright. Yun lang po yung yung tanda, or meron po bang manual na guidance din po ninyo sa LGUs at pwede niyo pong padalang kopya dito sa aming Committee of the Whole?
Director Salvador to highlight those parts of the manual.
Good afternoon po, Senator.
Thank you.
Chair.
Director, kung pwede maikli lang kasi gusto ko rin pong balikan agad si Secdar. Or actually, ma'am, pwede nyo bang isubmit na lang dito sa aming Committee of the Whole?
Po, importante lang po na sabihin ko na ang NMIS po ang nagte-train po sa mga local government meat inspectors.
Alright.
At
Okay
isa
po.
sa inyo, pati po yung mga guidelines po namin on how to differentiate yun pong freshly, yung newly slaughtered from frozen meat po. Salamat po.
Alright, salamat Director. Taasahan po namin yung submission po ninyo doon. And then Secdar, in relation po dun sa mga imports pa rin, baka makonsider din ng aming Committee of the Whole, baka magkaroon ng executive session kasama ng Anti-Smuggling Task Force para hindi naman sinasadyang makompromiso yung mga ongoing operations sa pamamagitan ng written updates. Pangalawang operational question ko po sa inyo, Secdar, hindi naman po titigil yung mga operasyon ninyo sa mga palengke, di po ba? Ano po yung sistema, at least sa ngayon, para malaman na yung bagong katay na baboy ay hindi galing sa mga lugar na mayroong ASF pa?
Mayroon pong sistema po yon at mayroon nga kaming color coding at hindi pinapayagan na ibiyabiyahe yung mga nasa red zones pupunta sa ibang zones. So, nandyan nakabantay ang BAI at saka NMIS. Yun po ang isa na maigting na ginagawa po natin.
Pero lampas po, Sec, sa trabahong gagawin ng BAI at saka yung NMIS, pagdating na nga po ng mga pork supplies sa mga palengke, tuloy pa naman po ba yung pagmamonitor nyo doon para nga siguraduhin na kung may makalusot man na ASF affected pala na pork supplies, ay ma-pull out pa rin mula sa mga palengke?
Kasama po yun sa monitoring and surveillance natin. Lahat po kasama yan. Enforcement na yun po ng existing laws.
Alright, salamat, Sec. At ano po yung paraan sa ngayon pa rin ng DA para ma-inspeksyon kung mayroong ngang nakalusot sa LGU borders na karne na mula sa mga ASF affected areas papunta sa ating mga palengke? Natalakay po kasi natin yung malaking gap pa rin sa first border facility, yung kahinaan pa rin sa usapin ng second border, and then yung over dependence at demand ngayon sa LGUs na hindi pa handa para sa third border kahit pa kulang na kulang pa rin sa first and second. So paano ma-inspectionan niyo pa po ba yung mga pork supplies na darating sa mga palengke?
mayroon tayong ugnayan sa Local Price Coordinating Council who are supposed to really mobilize their own resources. At mayroon pa rin quarantine checkpoint sa mga borders ang bai at NMIS.
Opo, Sec. Pero yung Local Price Coordinating Council po, siguro hindi naman sila yung aasahan natin or ng DA na pagsiguro na at the point of sale, wala pong ASF-affected pork na maibenta sa ating mga consumers. And yung quarantine po, sabi nyo nga, nandyan yung bai, nandun yung NMIS. Pero pagdating po sa palengke, paano po yung actual na inspection measures ng department para kumbaga ma-intercept kung meron pa ring makalampas sa dalawang ahensya makarating sa palengke ang ASF affected pork?
Kaya po kayo, NMIS ang may toka yan at I will request Director Salvador to highlight.
Madam Chair, lahat po ng aming Regional Technical Operation Centers, meron po kami mga enforcement team na gumagala po sa mga palengke. Tinitignan po, nakasulat naman po sa guidelines namin na dapat po nagtitinda po sa palengke, nakasabit po yung meat inspection certificate na binibigay po namin sa mga kinatay po na baboy sa accredited slaughterhouses po ng NMIS or sa mga locally registered. Pag wala po yun, ma'am, kino-confiscate po yun, kino-confiscate po ng aming team para nang sa ganun po ay hindi po siya dapat ibenta kasi because of the food safety issue po at saka baka po meron din po siyang ASF or hindi po namin sinasabi na ganun. Kaya lang po, the fact na hindi po siya nagdaan sa tamang pagsusuri sa inspection po, it warrants na they shall be confiscated po by our team. Salamat po.
Salamat, Director. Pakisubmit din po sa aming Committee of the Whole iyan. Siyempre, pati yan kasama sa pagsuporta natin sa ating domestic hog industry na early on nag-raise ng warning tungkol sa ASF mula sa mga imported pork at hanggang ngayon ay talagang nagsusulong pa rin ng iba't ibang biosafety measures. Hindi dapat na makompetensyahan din sila ng mga ASF-infected pork products pala sa ating mga palengke. Sec-DAR, no? Sa ibang mga bansa, meron nga pong mga sistema para natutuntun natin kung saan nanggagaling ang paninda. So meron din po silang mga certification system, mayroong traceability, yung mga produkto para sa hindi lang pork, pati isda, karne ng baka at mga organic na paninda. Meron po ba at ano po, kung mayroon, ano po ang medium-term plan ng department para yung ganitong pagtunton, no, yung ganitong pagtukoy ay magawa na nating automatic?
Meron po tayo at ang Bureau of Animal Industry in tandem with NMIS ay meron mga existing mga measures po and I'd like to request Redrin Morales to highlight them.
Thank you, Mr.
Sec,
Chair.
ito po ay medium-term plan na, hindi mga dating sistema natin.
Madam Chair, sa ngayon po, may sistema po tayo ng accreditation. Ano po, ibig po sabihin kung sa mga buhay na hayop, bago po dalhin yan sa bahay katayan, yan po ay may health certificate at may shipping permit. At yan po ay hinahanap po sa bahay katayan. Kapag wala po yan, hindi po dapat kinakatay yung mga hayop kagaya ng baboy. Ano po. At yan, pag lumabas naman po dyan sa bahay katayan, yan naman po ay ini-issuehan ulit ng meat inspection certificate, certifying na na-inspect yung karne at fit for human consumption. At again, meron uli po yung shipping permit, papunta naman po doon sa tindahan. Yun pong traceability program, Madam Chair, sa kasalukuyan po, ay may mga nakalatag po na mga plano na tinitignan po ang Department of Agriculture kasama po ang NMIS. Lagay po natin ng sistema, yun pong tinatawag po ninyo na traceability. So
Yes.
we're working on that direction po, Madam Chair. And both bai and NMIS po sa kasalukuyan ay nagtutulong po na magkaroon din po ng mga pagkilos para po doon sa pag-automate din po ng ating system. Ano po yung para po mas maging madali po yung trabaho ng inspektor maging quarantine officer man yan o plant officer or meat control officer. We're trying to go on that direction po, Madam Chair. Nakalatag po yung mga medium to long-term programs, Madam Chair.
Okay, salamat po para dyan. Kasi ibig sabihin, sa ngayon at least, wala pa po tayong ganyang medium-term plan, but at least nasa proseso tayo ng pagde-develop ng ganyang mga medium at long-term plans, including that aspect of automation para nga gawing automatic itong prosesong ito at erase yung ating certification at traceability systems to international standards. Kaya nga po inaaral nyo na po pala yung sistema nila sa Republic of Korea para ma-adapt o ma-adopt natin yung mga sistema na bagay din sa atin. And again, I think malaking tulong din ito para sa ating domestic livestock industries, hindi lang sa hog pero sa lahat, no. Sa isda po kasi Secretary, no, gusto rin natin na tayo ay bibili lamang mula sa mga mangingisda na halimbawa hindi gumagamit sa dynamite fishing at iba pang mapanirang paraan ng paghuli ng isda. Ito consistent lang hindi lang sa ating domestic fishery laws pero yung ating international fishing conventions din. Pangatlo, SecDAR, yung pangatlong operational question ko sa inyo. Gusto po nating, ito importante, gusto po nating makapagbenta sa magandang presyo ang ating mga magbababoy. Ay hula po ako na kung ang pagbebenta ay dumadaan halimbawa sa Monterey o sa fresh options, ay kaya nilang ipakita ang mga passport, ika nga, na magpapatunay na hindi nga double dead, to use the words of Senping na kinwote ni Minority Leader kanina, hindi double dead at hindi galing sa mga ASF infected areas ang baboy na nasa warehouse nila. Ang mga kababayan natin, Sec, naghahanap ng produktong sigurado ay pupunta sa suki, sa palengke na mapagkakatiwalaan o pupunta dito sa mga modernong outlets na ito. Ika nga sa isang patalastas, di ba, Sec, makakatiyak na ang baboy ay laging bago at walang tama. Kahit pa on any given day, hindi si suki mismo ang nagbenta sa iyo. So, pero sa pagkaalam ko po, hindi sa kanila dumadaan ang mga benta ng ating mga nanay na nag-aalaga ng baboy sa Pampanga, Bulacan, Nueva Ecija at Batangas. At dahil dito, hindi rin sila, itong mga kabaro ko, hindi rin sila makakakuha ng magandang presyo o premium price. Kahit napakaayos ng ginawa nilang pag-aaruga sa kanilang mga alaga. Napakarami pala po mga kababaihan, SecDAR, kung hindi nyo pa po alam, nandito po sa backyard hog racing. Ito bang program ng DA sa livestock na clustering ay makakatulong upang ang supply nila ng mga kababaihang ito ay sa Monterey o sa fresh options dumaan? Ano pong palagay ninyo, SecDAR?
Sige po, nandito po ang aming USEC for livestock at kasama po dun sa mga oversight and projects under him po. USEC Medrano.
Tungkol po dun sa clustering concept para sa ating mga backyard swine raisers na tinamag po ng ASF, sila po ay ikla-cluster natin. Around mga at least 50 sila para mabigyan po sila ng suporta so that they will be able to establish yung tinatawag nating biosecured housing facility. Para hindi
Actually, Yusek, willing po sila na sumunod at magsumbong din tungkol sa biosafety. Kumbaga sila'y maging katulong ng department na magbantay para sa biosafety.
Kasama din po natin siyempre ang mga LGUs, tutulong din po. At doon sa pagkla-cluster po, sinisigurado natin na may mga kasamang mga women farmers. Mga pamilya-pamilya po sila. So, ayun po ang bagong patakaran natin. Ang tawag po natin diyan ay we will restructure We will modernize the way we produce hog in the backyard para maiwasan na po natin itong ASF. At sila po ay magkaroon ng sustainable livelihood. Tuloy-tuloy na po yan. So yun ang bago pong sistema natin. At meron po tayong budget para sa mga clustered smallhold swine raisers. Katulong po natin ang mga local government units. At ini-implement na po natin yan.
Salamat, Yusek, sa ganung update. Actually, hindi ko pa po masyadong nababalitaan yon sa mga kabaro kong bababoy dun sa mga probinsyang nabanggit ko. Pero kung may plano na kayong ganon or sinisimulan nyo na pong i-roll out, I'm very sure i-welcome po nila. Ay nilalapit ko po sa inyo itong kanilang intensyon na makipag-partner sa inyo dyan sa clustering strategy at ibabalita rin po namin sa kanila na mayroon pong ganito. Kasi hanggang sa ngayon po, Yusek, ang kwento po nila, ang karanasan nila ay, yun na nga for household consumption, yung kanila, hindi po nila maramdaman pa na nagre-reach out na ang DA sa kanila. So I am certain i-welcome nila kung in partnership sa LGUs, ay deliberately, purposefully isasama ninyo sa department sila dito sa clustering strategy. At gaya ko po ng nabanggit ko kanina, kaya po lumapit itong mga kapwa nanay ko kasi nga willing sila na maging kapartner kahit doon sa usapin ng pagbantay at pag-monitor, pati pag-report, pagsumbong tungkol sa biosafety measures. Pero syempre, bago nila nalaman na isasama na sila or kasama sila sa clustering, tinatanong nila kung paano sila hindi masasapawan ng imported. So talagang top of mind dito. Hindi sila masasapawan ng imported na supply kung kukuha sila uli ng mga biik na aalagaan. So pati itong champion ng ating mga domestic hog raisers, no, yung repopulation, top of mind na rin po sa mga kababaihang ito. And salamat din, Yusek, dahil matatanong din kasi natin, no, hindi po kaya na kailangan na mas dito nga ang pag-organisa ng clusters. Sa pag-organisa ng clusters, mas dito tumutok ang DA kaysa halimbawa sa pamimigay ng freezers, halimbawa, para maging madali para sa ating cold chain, para sa ating mga retailers na sa kanila regular na kumuha ng dekalidad at sapat na supply. So Sek, salamat din sa mabuting balita tungkol diyan. Paabot ko talaga sa ating mga kababayang babaeng magbababoy, mga backyard hog raisers. Ngayon po, Mr. President, gusto ko pong makapagtanong din NEDA Secretary Carl. Yes, Mr. President.
NEDA, Secretary Carl Chu has already asked to be excused.
Secretary Carl? I see, Mr. President. Kung ganon, through the presiding officer, magpapadala na lang po ako ng tanong sa kanila in writing and seek the submission of the NEDA's responses. Particular po, Mr. President, dun sa mga rekomendasyon ni Dr. Roelio Briones ng PIDS na nagbigay talaga ng timbang sa higit-higit na pagsuporta ng gobyerno sa ating domestic hog raisers sa usapin ng biosafety, sa usapin ng kapital, sa usapin ng pagkakaroon ng mga inahin, sa usapin ng tulong sa kanila sa transportasyon kesa itong isinulong, no, na pagtaas ng MAV at sabay na pagbagsak pa ng taripa. So lastly, Mr. President, kung wala na po si Sec Carl, for the record na lang po, hinihingi ko po mag-submit din ang DA at ang BOC ng kanilang mga sagot sa Committee of the Whole sa mga tanong na ito. What is the volume of meat importations from 2019 to the present sa Port of Manila at sa MICP? Pangalawa, who are the top importers in terms of volume and tax contribution? Pangatlo, what is the volume of MAV allocation issued by DA to importers and who are these importers? Fourth, kasi dapat mag-match ang MAV at volume of imports dahil kung hindi, itukuyin nila no saan pumapasok yung mga smuggled meat products. And for the record, Mr. President, maisubmit po nila at kung hindi po ay hihilingin ko po sa Committee of the Whole na isubpoena po natin ang mga impormasyon nito. Maraming salamat
I'm
po
sure.
sa ating resource persons. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Oliveros. I'm sure NEDA is monitoring, so we will. They have monitored your request. In the
Mr.
meantime,
President,
I'd like to.
just
yes,
a request for submissions very quickly. Just a request for submissions very quickly, Mr. President. With
Yes,
the permission
go ahead,
of the Senate. Yes. Earlier in our questioning, the BOC has said that they have been able to reconcile the figures regarding 226 million kilos and now it's 256. If they can million kilos, if they can submit that in writing, clarifying the discrepancy and how they were able to reconcile it. That's one, Mr. President, submitted to the Committee of the Whole. And the second one, Mr. President, is on the issue of administrative cases filed against non-presidential appointees, if any, on the Cresto investigation. Can we have the DA submit if there are administrative cases to be filed against non-presidential appointees on the findings of Cresto? Thank you, Mr.
All right.
President.
All right, the BOC is directed to respond to that in writing. Also, the Department of Agriculture on the request of Senator Pangilinan.
Do that.
Senator 𝘂𝗶 is made a co-author of the Committee of the Whole resolution withdrawing the President EO 128. Anyway, for the record. So now, next is Senator Pia Cayetano. But before Senator Pia Cayetano, she has asked that two resource persons be invited and that they be given a chance to present short statements. So with the permission of Senator Pia Cayetano, we would like to give them the chance now before we give you the floor. University of the Philippines, Los Baños College of Agriculture and Food Science, Dean 𝙁𝙘𝙀𝙀 Jr., Professor Sulabo, and also the Philippine Futures Thinking Society, Professor Sherman Cruz. So let's start with the Dean 𝙁𝙘𝙀 Jr.
I request for a leave because I have another equally important meeting. Mr. President.
I'm sorry, Secretary Dar, what was that?
Can I request for a leave now because I have another equally important meeting now?
Mr. President, before Secretary Dar leaves,
Yes, Senator Lacson, before Secretary
there's one
Dar.
request. Can the committee be furnished with certificates of ownership and or lease contracts of the importers with cold storage warehouses? Ito pa yung request ng Bureau of Customs so they can check with their records.
We will do that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
All right, that's placed on record. Thank you, Secretary Dar. As long, yes, Senator Cayetano.
Yes, also, if Secretary Dar is leaving, can we be assured that his USECs are listening and that they will, because these persons, these experts I invited is for their benefit, no, for all of us, so that we can also learn from them. So sana, I'm sure Secretary mag-iwan kayo ng mga USEC. Thank you.
Ang iiwanan po natin dito ang Undersecretary for Livestock, Yusek Medrano. Siya yung mag-chair from this end. And the ASEC for Policy, ASEC Noel Padre, and Director ng BAI at saka Executive Director ng NMIS. Apat po sila dito sa conference room. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. You may be excused, but you may monitor.
Opo.
You can continue monitoring, so you can listen to the manifestation from the UP Los Baños and the Philippine Futures Thinking Society. While your people are there, just in case there are any questions. So again, the UP Los Baños Dean of the College of Agriculture and Food Science, go ahead. You're muted. We cannot hear. Perhaps you're muted. Please unmute.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah,
Do you hear me now, sir? Sir, Honorable
Yes.
President, can I request that Dr. Solabo talk before me? I'll talk after him.
You want us to recognize
Recognize
Professor Cruz first?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
All right. So the Professor Sherman Cruz of the Philippine Futures Thinking Society, go ahead.
Sir, Professor Solabo, sir. Honorable President,
So Professor Solabo in
Yes,
your
sir.
sa UP Los Baños. Sige.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
Professor Solabo, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. May I be allowed to share?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. President, our honorable senators, thank you for this opportunity for us to be able to share a few things in this Senate hearing. So I'm Dr. Rommel Sulabo. I am the director of the Institute of Animal Science, and I am also the chair of the Swine Commodity RDE team of UPLB CAFS. And for our part, we really believe that the swine industry is definitely a vital segment of the Philippine economy. And I think that is both in terms of its economic contribution as well as its social value. We always have to remember that we have a large number of our rural communities that are highly dependent on this livelihood. The other thing that we always have to remind ourselves is that the Philippine swine industry has historically been one of the strongest industries in the livestock business. Pre-ASF, in fact, we are one of the largest pork producing countries in the world. We are number 8 in the world. And we also have to always remember that there are numerous allied industries from corn, cassava, rice, coconut, the animal feed industry, the feed supplement industry, the veterinary feed industry, just to name a few, that is largely reliant on the Philippine swine industry. And so clearly there is a multiplier effect. So the mandate of the College of Agriculture and Food Science is to pursue research, development, and extension activities that is needed for the development of the Philippine swine industry. So all of our efforts is to assist the swine industry in becoming sustainable and resilient to uncertainties of economics, weather, health, and security, where we are in fact today. So I think one of the things that we would like to really pursue is to future-proof our industry. And one of the things that the university has spearheaded is to create avenues for that. So the first is the creation of the swine commodity team. This is under the College of Agriculture and Food Science. The second is the establishment of the UPLB Technical Advisory Committee for the surveillance, prevention, and control of African swine fever and avian influenza. We also have to remind ourselves that African swine fever will not be the last virus that we will be facing. And so we have to prepare ourselves for the next pandemic, if we would say. And so 4 areas that UPLB would like to really support this industry is data analytics. We have proposals now. This committee has proposals on disease surveillance. Vaccine development is definitely one area. This is an area that I think we've lacked. Medyo nahuli talaga tayo. If we would compare ourselves now to Vietnam in the second quarter of this year will already be commercializing an ASF vaccine that they have developed together with USDA. So sila medyo nauna na. Pero hindi naman tayo nahuhuli. We have people, we have experts within the Philippines that are capable of developing vaccines. And then the last is mitigation and control kasi nandito na yung virus. So we need to find ways on understanding the routes of transmission because we feel that there are still things that we need to understand kung bakit siya kumakalat. And then we need to develop technologies where we can mitigate and control the virus. And so those are the responsibilities of this advisory committee. And then the final initiative of UP is the establishment of the National Zoonosis Center. And this was just recently approved as a program by the Board of Regents. And the purpose of this Zoonosis Center is really to focus on pre-emerging and emerging zoonotic diseases. Para yung mga ganitong situations ay hindi na tayo maabot sa ganitong problema, both for ASF and even for COVID. And so I think these are some of the things that we as an institution can really be involved in so that in the future ay hindi na tayo aabot sa ganitong kalaking problema.
All right, thank you. Dean Ag-Visit, you may continue now.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Do you hear me clearly now? Thank you, Dr. Romel Solabo, for that. So I will just be sharing to you some initiatives. Those are the broader initiatives being conducted by the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. And I would like just to share what we have been doing in the College of Agriculture and Food Science. Of course, as Dr. Romel has said a while ago, there are many allied industries associated with swine and, of course, with poultry. And one of the things that we have been doing is to really monitor the fall armyworm, which is greatly affecting the corn farmers. We have been monitoring it before it really entered our country. So I think the effect of the minimal effect of fall armyworm is due to monitoring and close relationship between the National Crop Protection Center, the Institute of Food Science, Entomology and Plant Pathology, together with DA, regarding the monitoring of this new problem that could arise. Of course, just recently, the College of Agriculture has been just launched the nano fertilizers or Fertigro to add in terms of the productivity on the sustainability of some of our crops, especially rice, coconut, cacao, and banana. And in terms of the traceability of meat, a while ago, Honorable Senator Ontiveros said a while ago that I think that we have already a traceability, initial traceability program that was spearheaded by Dr. Vega and Professor Jade Publico. It is with DOST. So if DA can hear me now, they can always correlate help there as help from DOST. And like what Dr. Solabo said, we have established the zoonosis program of the university to make us more in-depth in terms of what's happening. And of course, the College of Agriculture now is undergoing a new initiative on futures thinking innovation in research for sustainable food systems and food security. Of course, thank you, Senator Pia, for helping us here. Of course, this innovation in terms of is centered on responsible consumption and production. So we look into the sustainable food systems. So upon initial workshop that we had, we were looking into alternative foods or high protein, wellness, health, and indigenous sources. And of course, we was looking into digitizing agriculture or data analytics. And that is one part of what Dr. Solabo said in terms of ASF monitoring also. So basically, that's for the College of Agriculture and Food Science, sir.
Thank you very much, Dean. All right, we now like to listen to Professor Sherman Cruz of the Philippine Futures Thinking Society before we recognize Senator Cayetano. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President. And I would like to request the Senate committee in charge of because I shared with them my deck, because I have some difficulty sharing my deck using my WebEx access at the moment. So okay, so there you go. So I would like to give some initial insights about the futures of food security using a futures thinking lens. Of course, from the conversation that we've had since this morning, apparently it reminds that we should not forget that seasonal that they happen year in, year out. In fact, in China in 2018, 2019, their hog herds were wiped out by the African swine flu. And now that they're faced with the pandemic, they try to explore new ways, beyond importation, as a solution to ensure food security, in the long run, because of importation as a solution are medium term, and they're not sustainable. So they've seen that. In fact, the two biggest global meat consumers in the world, in the US and China, are looking for ways by which they could ensure that they are secure in terms of food in the next 20 to 30 years, because flus like the African swine flu will get, the frequency will increase, due to climate change impacts. And second, it was pointed out that there is a need for us to strengthen our surveillance system and capacity, our institution, to develop actionable systems and enable them to deliver, the executable plans. But then, of course, the solutions that we create. Next slide, please. The solution is next slide. Can you move it to the next slide, please? Yep. But then, of course, the solutions that we create are almost always informed in the way we imagine the future. In futures thinking. No, can you please go back to the last slide, the first slide? Yeah, yeah. This is the Arab proverb that says, it's pretty quite instructive, because it says that he who predicts the future lies even if he tells the truth. This accentuates the unpredictability of events, the uncertainty and complexity of things and stuff that drives us human civilization today. And in fact, in futures thinking, the future does not exist yet. The future remains unknown. But to a certain extent, we can forecast it. But then, of course, forecasting is informed by a linear view of the future. And when you have a linear view of the future, it gives you only a limited option, like some sort of, if it's correlational, that's good, cause and effect, that's good. But normally it leads you only to one single solution. Next slide, please. Next slide. And this is an empirically validated fact according to the RAND. No, last slide. I'm sorry about that. Last slide. Because I just want to accentuate this. This is a finding from the RAND Corporation 30 years ago. They've said that it is an empirically validated fact that our assumptions about the future, be it an emerging risk, an existential threat, or opportunity, influences the way we create policy and strategy. And when we use, next slide, a linear lens, to analyze crisis, there is the likelihood of a one single predictable or a highly likely assumption runs the risk of being seriously wrong. And that puts an organization, a decision maker, or a nation state in crisis when we are only using one particular lens. And of course, one particular lens that we use to analyze crisis or risk management is continued economic growth. But the RAND Corporation has been saying that we have to go beyond continued economic growth. Next slide. And capacitate and train ourselves to analyze in multiplicities, to assume in plurality. Because the RAND Corporation have said that when we learn how to anticipate and accommodate a wide variety of possibilities or potential changes that may occur, this enables us to produce a more robust, anti-fragile, sustainable, highly plausible, and executable plans. What do we mean when we say anti-fragility? Is that an organization, a nation state, or a program or a project thrives in times of crisis. It's not, crisis is also an opportunity, and then we have to learn how to ask the right questions. Like, what are the critical multiple assumptions that we cannot ignore as far as the swine flu is concerned? Assumptions, according to RAND corporations, can transform a nation. They've been saying that the assumptions that we make, we have to be careful because it could also kill people. and kill economies. That's why for Rand Corporation, they really place so much importance in the assumptions that we make when we try to analyze a particular topic, domain, or a policy issue. Next slide, please. And then, of course, these are the questions that we might want to be asking, because year in, year out, the Philippines has always been overwhelmed by different type of crisis. Like, how might we thrive in crisis? If that becomes the natural, normal, societal experience that we have, perhaps let's just say in the next 5 to 10 years. The question is, how might we thrive in crisis? How might we avoid or prevent worst case scenarios from occurring? How might we translate uncertainty as an asset, opportunity, or wealth instead of a threat? I've been having this conversation with my friends in the European Commission, and they're trying to find ways to make uncertainty as an asset. Next slide, please. And then, of course, it's very essential that our institutions, like the Department of Agrarian Reform, must be able to build its anticipatory intelligence. And we do this if we integrate, futures thinking tools and methodologies and futures program, as I've seen in the resolution, in order for us to have the capacity to take the bull by the horn, face emerging issues squarely, and create food security policies and measures that are futures thinking driven and systems future proof to achieve SDG number 2 by 2030. Next slide. And then, of course, the larger issue comes to mind when on a yearly basis we're faced with crisis. How might we prepare to feed the Philippine population that is expected to grow to nearly 148.3 million by 2050? Futures thinking invites us to look at the bigger picture here and try to create a strategy that links, with the forest and not just the trees. So given that the country continues to grapple with pandemic risk, climate change impacts, and the rise in food security, how might we prepare to feed our population by 2050? Next slide. And there are many ways to do that. And one futures thinking tools and methods is that we use multiple lens. Like, for example, if you apply this to analyze, the future of flu virus, like swine virus, like, how might the futures of food security or insecurity or ASF look like in a COVID-19 economic recovery growth scenario? What are the opportunities? What are the risks and the emerging threats? In order for us not to be surprised, in order for us to create economies that are surprise-free. And then, of course, in the event of collapse, how might we address future flu events or crisis events in a collapse scenario? And then how might we address, crisis, in a disciplined scenario? It's a combination of growth and collapse. And then how might we envision ourselves wherein, you have totally transformed the way we do surveillance systems and developed DAR's or our institution's capability for anticipatory intelligence to make uncertainty an asset for transformation. Next slide, please. And these are the things that are very critical and crucial, in managing crisis in the 21st century, not just in managing crisis, but developing the ability to spot emerging issues. I was in Russia yesterday. Russia has been using data mining to spot emerging risks and threats. Even 5 years, 7 years before, they were able to spot emerging risks and threats and try to deliberate on that in the context of policy. But then, how do we make it so, as far from an institutional perspective is concerned? Like the Congress and the Senate or the Department of Agrarian Reform, is that we have to make futures literacy widespread. Second is develop or increase our anticipatory intelligence through research, innovation, development of knowledge portal, and the institutionalization of futures thinking and policy making. To enable us to anticipate emerging risk, strategy, and policy using multiple scenario tools and methodologies, married with artificial intelligence, data analytics, and plan and prepare using alternative future scenarios. So we just don't plan for continued economic growth. We have to learn how to plan for multiple scenarios. And then, of course, it is very crucial that the reason why we have this kind of conversation is to provoke people to rethink and reframe the way we imagine risk and communicate, engage, and hopefully it would inspire a nationwide action and national conversation that the Philippines as a nation, has the capacity to do anticipatory governance. Just to share to you some of the other alternative options that China and the US has, and some of the OECD countries when it comes to, African swine flu, wherein their cow or pig or chicken herd are impacted. Right in 2019, when China experienced that, billions of cows and pigs died because of the African swine flu virus. That is where they have increased their investment in investing plant-based substitutes. So to ensure food security, not necessarily to change, the meat industry or threaten the meat industry, but to ensure food security as far as the nation is concerned. Because they're thinking about feeding 1.3 billion people. And they have increased their investment in plant-based substitute by almost 25 to 30%. And another one that the US is doing now to address food crisis in African swine flu scenario is you have to address the food waste. Food waste is a critical global issue. And if we have the mechanism to ensure that we could reduce our food waste, like encouraging big retailers in the Philippines, to take this on, that would ensure food security to a certain extent. What I'm saying here is that when we use alternative future scenario, it gives us multiple options to ensure food security and, of course, prevent food insecurity in a worst case scenario occurring in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Professor Sherman Cruz. All right, thank you very much. We now recognize Senator Pia Cayetano. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd like to thank His Honor and the committee for inviting these experts that I recommended. I think they really added value to our discussion. As I said in my very brief manifestation yesterday, I leave it to my colleagues who are really the experts, on this issue, on the very detailed issue on how we ended up in this mess. No, my colleagues, I take my hat off to you for the detailed investigation also and research that you have been doing. My contribution to all this, Mr. President, is really more of forward thinking and futures thinking. And that's precisely why I asked that these experts be brought here. So I won't really be asking many questions, but more of comments, reactions to their statements, also coming from the questions I had from the 2 days of hearings that we've already had. So I'd like to start with just basically saying that in the presentation of Professor Romel, he mentioned that their national zones, as one of the things that they are doing is they have put up a UPLB technical advisory group, and they will be doing data analytics, disease surveillance, vaccine development, and mitigation control. So I'd like to find out later on, I'll just post all my questions, then you can do a quick response later on to all of my points. May we know if you have sufficient funding for this? What are your needs? Because this is really what frustrates me, no? We have the expertise. Walang magsasabi na wala tayong marunong gumawa ng ganyan. And then now, I'm happy to know that the system is in place. So I just want to know, and I'm happy when you said, don't worry, hindi naman tayo huling-huli. Yun nga lang, naunahan tayo ng Vietnam. I also learned of that. So what can we do to move this forward? And remember, right now, we're just talking about swine, no? But we also have other animal industries to take care of, the fisheries, the poultry, and so on and so forth. So we won't have time to take that all up now, but very brief response later on what you need, and then maybe you can submit it, because in a few months we will be taking up the budget, and we want to ensure that we look into that. And then I tie it into DA na Alam nyo ba to? Are you working with them? And if so, aligned ba yung needs nyo? You know, do you have anything else to add to that? Okay. So that's the first point that I want to raise. And then more for the benefit of the public watching us, no? Because the people here, I will already preaching to the choir. Kayo na yung mas nakakaalam pa kaysa sa akin. But I happen to be the regional chair of an organization of parliamentarians. It's called Unite. It's a network of parliamentarians to end infectious diseases. And we had a meeting with the network of parliamentarians. It's a group naman by the World Bank to see how we could collaborate further internationally. So when I hear you speaking of ganito ginawa ng China, and I'm talking now to Dr. Sherman naman, no? Ganito ginawa ng China, ganito ginawa ng Vietnam, it's all about international cooperation and learning from each other. Hindi naman to unahan, no? And so what I'd like to share is that we had a doctor in that group who mentioned that we really have to keep studying some more and investing in zoonotic diseases. So for the information of the public, ano ba yung zoonotic diseases? I'm not a scientist, but I learned about this about a year ago. Na yung pala yung pinagmumulan nitong lahat na niraranasan natin ngayon. Disease germs that come from animals that are transmitted or spread between animals and humans, and then nanganganak ng isang katutak na klase. So it actually is very similar to a certain extent. I'll not get technical because I'm not the technical person. But that's what COVID is all about also, diba? So me and my layman's understanding, they all come under the same science, no? A similar science. Na saan ba nanggagaling? It's the loss of the habitat of these animals. It's the spread of these animals, whether alive or dead, in human life, right? That's why yung sa Wuhan, one of the suspects nga is yung mga wild exotic animals na nandun sa palengke, blah, blah, blah. My point is, wow, can we please, I'm so happy that UP Los Baños is already on top of this. What can we do to support it further? Why can't we be the hub of knowledge of the region of Asia? Because we have such a biodiverse environment and we have the experts. So that's where I'm heading. And then I also wanted to add to the discussion that, again, in my international conferences brought about by COVID, dahil maraming online conferences na na-attend, na pinapapunta ako ng Senate President online, the Vice President for Sustainable Development at the World Bank, si 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤, expressed how food systems are important to preventing public health emergencies. Sadly, kung hindi pa nangyari to, I'm not aware, no, that we look at it from that kind of perspective. Kung hindi pa nangyari ang ASF, maybe DA is doing their own little thing. Fisheries is doing their own little thing, I would suppose, because that's their job. But in the whole context of food security of our country, that's where, and I had messaged Secretary Carl kasi I know that he already excused himself, no? And he has his team also listening. That's where the SDGs are so important. And I'll take a moment to put up the slide, to put up my SDG, yeah, there you go. So simple lang naman to. I would suppose everybody here is familiar, but I took the liberty of encircling the SDGs that are directly related and involved in this current ASF problem that we have. No poverty. So obviously, itong mga kababayan natin, particularly the farmers and the allied industries, a lot of them na-mention nga ni Senator Riza kanina are backyard farmers, women. Poverty talaga pupuntahan nila, di ba? So X na tayo dyan sa 1. Sa hunger naman, well, again, pag nagka-shortage tayo, hunger ang papunta natin, and even for those growers that mostly it's for home consumption, number 2 na naman ang tinatamaan, no? Yung zero hunger. Good health, I don't need to elaborate on that. The whole COVID experience is about addressing good health. Gender equality, again, to support also what Senator Riza brought up, a lot of these hog raisers are women. And so they lose their jobs, they lose their ability to care for their family when we do not take into consideration these individual, these small growers, and apparently malaki pala yung population nila. And then finally, number 8, decent work and economic growth. As Professor Romel pointed out, the swine industry is a vital economic contributor to the Philippines, no? And it has great social value. So nakakagulat lang that my colleagues who are very knowledgeable on all this have to point out that hindi ba kayo aware na affected itong mga industries na to? Because it is so like basic na parang paano ba hindi nasama sa equation yan? Para bang paano ba hindi nasama sa problem solving yan? I join my colleagues in that frustration. So wala namang ibang solusyon kundi to adopt the approach that Professor Sherman Cruz has been talking about, which is yung futures thinking. And I'm happy to know that UP Los Baños is already undergoing the training on this. I also am aware that the Department of Agriculture is, kasi binring up ko na to sa kanila before the tackling of this year's budget last year. But this is again for the future, no? Unfortunately, hindi natin napagplanuhan. So basically, like I said, I don't really have that much questions, but maybe I'll leave the time for quick remarks by any of the resource persons after I end. Na yung kahalagahan nga nitong to use the SDG as a comprehensive framework, nandyan na yan. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. The ties and the relation of one to the other is already there. In fact, under zero hunger, kasama na dyan ang achieving food security, improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. So magkasama na yun eh. So parang it's very frustrating na we pull out one issue and neglect the other. Sana yung nakakarating sa plate ng Senate is the policy that we need to support 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Those are the kind of policy decisions that we should be having, and not how come nandito tayo in this situation now na we didn't learn from past experiences. Hindi naman tayo ginulat ng ASF eh, nandun na yun eh. Hindi lang napagplanuhan. So that's really just a very frustrating thing, Mr. President. And I think that's pretty much it. I do want to ask the resource person if they have any quick response. Like I said, the details on the budget that they need, I don't know if they want to submit that or merong quick response si Dean or si Professor Romel on that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Cayetano. Talagang athlete ka, no? That's exactly 10 minutes. Sinarado mo exactly 10 minutes eh. Galing. Any reaction from the...
Wrap it up.
Secretary Piñol, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Governor Piñol has a reaction. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I was very pleased with the presentation of the last 3 resource persons and the inputs of Senator Cayetano. Actually, I have submitted this to your office, Mr. President, but this actually is related to what they were talking about. Alam nyo, ang daming magaling na mga Pilipino, Mr. President. Maraming mga, pwede po ba akong makapag-screen share? Ang daming, humihingi po ako ng screen share kung pwede. Ang daming mga galing na mga Pilipino, tulad ng taga UPLB, ang gaganda ng mga ideas, everybody. Ang problema natin dyan, who will listen to you? And that is the problem. Maraming magaling na ideas, maraming magaling na solusyon, but have to understand that all of that will go through a bureaucratic process before it is implemented. And yan ang nagiging problema natin, even with ASF, Mr. President. That's why I submitted, hindi po maka-screen share, but I have actually submitted to your office, Mr. President, a proposal for the creation of a national body composed of experts to monitor and prepare for emerging risks and diseases tulad ng ASF and other pandemic. I am proposing that this be created through legislation. The proposed on emerging risks to human population of the country, including the plant and animal industry, is a must, given our experiences with the recent pandemic and animal and plant diseases. The absence of the scientific body was what caused the gargantuan problems and hardships experienced by the country today, especially in the handling and management of the COVID-19 pandemic and the African swine fever. In the case of the African swine fever, for example, I had proposed as early as 2018 the formation of a national interagency task force to help the Department of Agriculture address the threats of the hog viral disease. Several memorandums, including additional proposals for the installation of X-ray machines for the incoming passengers, accompanying and hand-carry luggages, were, however, not acted on. While it was a disappointing experience, this actually showed the functional deficiency of a bureaucracy in handling crisis situations. Since most of those in the critical agencies and bureaus of government are political appointees, problems on emerging threats and diseases would not be fully appreciated. I mean, how do you expect a former mayor to understand the effect of ASF on the hog industry? Besides, the bureaucracy, by its very nature, moves so slow that it could not possibly catch up with the fast mutating and spreading virus like the COVID-19 or the ASF. This was what exactly happened with our handling of COVID-19, where the initial data and information provided failed to emphasize the gravity of the threat. The results of the slow reaction and inaccurate appreciation of the threats brought us to where we are today, an economy which collapsed to negative 9.5%, a hog industry which lost 38% of its stocks, a banana industry which lost a big share of the foreign market because of the panga disease, and a poultry industry threatened by the recurrence of the bird flu. The organization, through legislation of a National Commission on Emerging Risks, would greatly help the leaders of the country, especially the president, in their decision-making and in crafting measures to protect the citizens of the country, including its agriculture and fisheries sector. Instead of leaving the decision-making to bureaucrats and government functionaries, scientists and experts will be relied upon to come up with science-based assessments and recommendations. The Commission should also focus on researches and studies to address the problems like the development of vaccines using local viral strains and remedies for diseases. I know Dr. Sulabo would understand this. Hindi lahat ng virus pare-pareho ang vaccine sapagkat maaring mag-mutate siya in a specific environment and location. This is another area where the country had largely been dependent on foreign technology and innovations, which I believe is a serious mistake given the fact that the virus could mutate into a strain peculiar to the environment and climate. This is a very serious matter which we should really work on, or else, with the countless emerging threats faced by the world now, our country will never be able to get out of the rut. Let me end. Prepare, you are preparing to fail. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any quick reaction before we have two more senators? Any quick reaction from Professor?
Yes, yes, sir.
Or Dean Advisit or Professor Cruz? Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Can I answer just the question of Dr.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Professor Sulabo.
Yes, sir. So first and foremost, the establishment of the Technical Advisory Committee for ASF in UPLB was established mainly to support the DA's initiatives. And the proposals, the four initiatives that I've mentioned, data analytics, disease surveillance, vaccine development and mitigation and control, there have already been four proposals that we have submitted. Three of them to DA Bar, and I believe one to DA Biotech. So maybe that's where we could that would be the place where we would need some help, because that would be resources would be needed to conduct this work. And then yung minention ni Secretary Piñol, no? So I think that's quite good that that was initiated earlier on. But UPLB on it, UP on its part, through the leadership of national scientist 𝚤𝚤𝙗𝙗, spurred the university to establish the National Zoonosis Centers for the same purpose. Para yung mga pre-emerging pa lang, hindi pa siya nagiging pandemic napag-aaralan na natin, na-identify na natin siya from the source at maiiwasan na natin siya na maging pandemic tulad ng COVID, tulad ng avian influenza. At although ASF is not zoonotic, still we would need the same facilities to conduct the work para mapag-aralan natin kung paano natin siya makokontrol. Yung lack lang ng facility na yon, yun lang yung reason kung bakit hindi tayo makagalaw, wala tayong ma-develop na paraan. Pero we do have those facilities. We have the people and the expertise within the country that can develop all those technologies. So I believe that's where we would need support, particularly of the Senate, because establishing a national zoonosis center is not going to be cheap. Kasi it would require a lot of very specialized equipment and facilities. But that is preparation for the future para yung mga problema na nararanasan natin ngayon with ASF and then with COVID and then hopefully not avian flu, hindi na natin mararanasan. So I think that's where we would need support.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, if I may, yep. Of course, first I would like to thank Senator P. Cayetano and Senator Tito Soto for the opportunity to share with you some ideas about futures thinking and foresight. But just to give you a quick update about what's going on in the ASEAN region is that the ASEAN just created a unit in foresight. You know, they've been doing significant mega trends analysis for the next 20, 30 years. And a part of that is actually Australia. And of course, in Singapore and Malaysia, they've been doing that in the last 20 to 30 years.